Senate Select Committee on Disaster Preparedness and Flooding will come to order. Clerk, call the roll.
Chairman Perry.
Here.
Vice Chair Flores.
Here.
Senator Betancourt.
Present.
Senator Blanco.
Here.
Senator Campbell.
Present.
Senator Hinojosa.
Present.
Senator Colkhorst. Senator Menendez. Senator Schwartner. Being 6, a quorum's established.
We have 6. Quorum is established. Members, Vice Chair Flores moves to limit public testimony in the hearing today to 2 minutes. A rejection, hearing none. Motion is adopted. Good morning, members. Thank you for being here today. Today we'll hear 4 bills regarding our state's preparation for and ability to recover from flooding and other natural disasters. We're going to start. I am going to hit the littler bills or the smaller bills. 2 of them were here in the regular session. Did Steph bring these? So. One didn't get, do we have the bill? Give it to Blanco. Give it to Blanco. You lay out Senator Safrini's bill. Chair recognizes Senator Colkhorst as present. All right, Senate Bill 43. Chair lays out Senate Bill 43 and asks Senator Blanco to explain it on behalf of the bill author, Senator Zaffarini.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill was passed unanimously by the Senate last session, but died in the House on the calendar. The Plum Creek Conservation District manages 28 flood control structures on the tributaries of Plum Creek and Hayes and Caldwell counties. SB 43 would impact them and the 2,039 dams across Texas. Flood control dams catch and store flood waters during normal and extreme rain events and then release them downstream at engineered rate. Some of the dams are more than 60 years old and need maintenance, rehabilitation, and repair. Usual permitting to maintain dam structures is a long and slow process, taking up to a year. This bill would enable the qualified district sponsor to use a permit exemption either to divert water from reservoir as needed for the limited purpose of using water to repair, maintain, or rehabilitate the dam or reservoir, or to construct or maintain a property owned or controlled by the sponsor of a storage facility of not more than 200 acre-feet of water for the purpose of erosion, flood water, and sediment control. This permit exemption would allow the dam and surrounding natural infrastructure to be maintained timely. Generally, the bill would define a qualified local sponsor, allow a qualified local sponsor to use a permit exemption, construct or maintain a property owned or controlled by the sponsor storage facility of not more than 200 acre-feet of water for the purpose of erosion, floodwater, and sediment control, and finally divert water from the reservoir as needed for the limited purpose of using it to repair, maintain, and rehabilitate the dam or reservoir, and specify that the exempt status would not change as long as the district owned the reservoir.
Thank you for that, Senator Blanco. Basically, members, without getting into a whole lot of dams, there are a whole lot of dams in Texas. Most of them are under state jurisdiction as far as maintenance and repair. Roughly around 2,200 earthened and meant to divert water during floods. Most people don't even know they exist. If but not for them, though, we would have severe flooding in multiple areas of this state, typically flat ground areas that you wouldn't even think would have a problem, but large rainfalls that create floods. 2,200 of those, and every day we reclassify one or more probably to, quote, high hazard dams, meaning that because of population growth in places of high population growth that they would actually experience life or property damage. So this is a way, basically my understanding is to allow someone other than just the soil and water conservation, which is pretty much the responsible for maintenance of those, the water districts that meet the certain exemptions and criteria to be able to help in that effort. Very supportive of it, probably will sign off on it. So that's effectively what it does. We will open up public testimony for Senate Bill 43 today. Chair calls Daniel Meyer, Heather Bounds, and John Foster.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Senator Campbell.
While we're waiting for those, Mr. Chairman, does this cover...
Daniel Meyer, Heather Bounds, and John Foster.
Does this cover the private dams that people have, like those that are around Sandy Creek?
So I'm going to let the resource witnesses kind of go through the jurisdiction. The answer is not a private dam, but these dams are a lot like the private dams and very often get confused as whether that's private or state. So if you drove by one, you'd probably think that that's a private because it's on private residence. It's actually an earthen dam created back in the 40s, and it's our problem. It's been litigated in jurisdictions jurisdictionally decided that the Corps gave those to us, and they are our problems. And we are about $2 billion behind on keeping up with those earth and dam maintenance projects. So if
And
I
you've
said
told
something
us that
incorrectly,
since the start.
I have told you that for, I have a lot of conversations regarding these dams, unfortunately.
$5 billion so we can get it.
So I'm going to go from this side forward, state your name, who you're with, position on the bill, and tell us what you need us to know. 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm John Foster with the Texas State Soil and Water Conservation Board. I have registered as a resource only. I'm just here to have
Okay.
any questions.
We may have questions for you. Chair recognizes Menendez. Senator Menendez is present.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Heather Bounds with the Texas State Soil and Water Conservation Board, here as a resource witness.
Okay, good. Go ahead, sir.
Hello, Chairman Perry and Senators. My name is Daniel Meyer. I'm the Executive Manager of Plum Creek Conservation District, which is located in Hays and Caldwell County. The Plum Creek Conservation District supports Senate Bill 43. The district is a local sponsor for 28 flood control structures that were constructed during the 1960s to protect against flood events and the resulting damage caused by erosion and loss of life and property due to uncontrolled floodwaters. Senate Bill 43 will allow our district and also the other districts in the state to utilize, when needed, the surface waters in the reservoir of the dam below the lowest port level for rehab and operation and maintenance purposes. During the ongoing drought, a couple of our rehab projects experienced delays because we had not yet received the necessary water permits at the time when we needed them. And the temporary permits that we did obtain had reached their limits. So during these delays, these dams were more vulnerable to erosion and possible failure events. Senate Bill 43 will also both improve government efficiency by streamlining the process and freeing up state personnel to work on other pressing matters. And of course, it would lower the cost of hiring contractors to do the repairs. And of course, naturally, as you know, contractors, they want to have the certainty that they have the adequate water supply. So again, thank you for Senator Zaffarini for sponsoring the bill, and to the committee for your time and consideration. Thank you.
John, I have a question for you, or either one, it doesn't matter. So how does this coordinate or complement or conflict with Soil and Water Conservation District's mission?
This particular...
State your name again.
This is John Foster, Programs Officer with the State Soil and Water Conservation Board. This legislation would be advantageous to the program.
Yep.
As he described, there's situations where you need water for mixing soil material,
Right.
or establishing grass to keep the soil there, things like that. And it's been a delay in certain cases. So yeah, it would be advantageous.
That's the way I read it. So any other questions for this panel or this bill? Senator Campbell. Chair recognizes Senator Swartner is present.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess for you, and I'm sorry I don't remember your name.
Daniel Meyer.
Daniel, with Plum Creek Conservation District. Does this bill affect, well, first of all, is there any conflict with the Plum Creek Conservation District and the River Authority that has authority, I guess, over Plum Creek, which would be GBRA, is that correct?
I wouldn't see any, no.
But GBRA is the River Authority for
Yes,
Plum Creek.
yes.
But you don't see them trying, just a conflict of either one of the, okay, thank you. And any of you, does this bill that you're aware of affect any privately built, not under state control dams that would be on private property? I guess man-made, and I'm still trying to understand that, so. Go ahead.
The structures that are eligible for our grant programs they're a very specific set of dams that we understand the ownership and land rights situation of all of those, and we don't see a problem with the eligible dams in our program and this legislation.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for this panel? All right, hearing none. Appreciate you guys. Thank you for being here. Anyone else wish to testify on, for, or against Senate Bill 43? Hearing none, public testimony is closed. We'll vote that bill out at the end of hearing. Chair lays out Senate Bill 2. Asks Senator Betancourt to explain the bill. I understand there is a committee sub.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Vice Chair Flores sends up committee sub for Senate Bill 2. Asks Bill Arthur to explain the bill and the changes done in sub.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Recent devastating floods in Kerr County and throughout central Texas highlight the need for critical flood early warning systems to alert the public. And many rural river systems in Flash Flood Alley are home to youth camps, campsites, RV parks, and other large gathering sites near flood-prone rivers. With limited cell phone connectivity in parts of this region, there's need to go back to what I call old-school technology, the outdoor warning sirens, which we know work to go work with cell phone alerts, which unfortunately are rather overloaded at this point in time. Senate Bill 2 requires the Texas Water Board to identify areas that have a history of severe flooding as well as other relevant factors such as loss of human life to flooding and existence of residences and other dwellings in flood-prone areas. Upon identification of these key areas, the board will direct the municipality or county to install outdoor warning siren systems. The bill requires the Water Development Board to adopt rules and procedures to implement the bill, including procedures for operation of an outdoor warning siren in a flood-prone area of the state, minimum standards for an outdoor warning siren installed, maintained, or operated in a flood-prone area, minimum standards for a backup operating system capable of powering an outdoor warning siren in a flood-prone area that's different from the primary operating system. And lastly, the board may consult with other entities when adopting rules and procedures. Water Development Board shall require the appropriate municipality or county to install, maintain, and operate one or more outdoor warning sirens following rules adopted by the board if the site of the installation is within the boundaries of the municipality. Municipality shall install, maintain, and operate the siren in unincorporated areas of the county. The county shall install, maintain, and operate the siren. Lastly, Senate Bill 2 allows for the use of any money made available from the state to assist municipalities and counties and other governmental entities in covering the cost of installation of outdoor warning sirens. The grant program will be funded in Senate Bill 3 by Chairman Huffman. Committee substitute for Senate Bill 2 moves the administration of the grant program from the Water Development Board to the Office of the Governor. The bill gives them the authority to delegate to another state agency the administration of the grant program. Lastly, the substitute makes technical corrections to the bill as filed, but no other substantial changes. When we started this discussion right after the weekend of July the 4th, we had reached out to LCRA and worked with them on a white paper to estimate the cost of implementing the program. They estimated the initial capital investment to be no greater than $50 million, and that will be funded in Senate Bill 3. We have today John Hoffman, Executive President of Water for LCRA, as a resource witness from the Texas Water Development Board to discuss Senate Bill 2. Be happy to answer any questions.
Senator Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator Betancourt. Tell me this, will the grants be available if a county already has a siren system in place? Will the grants be available for upgrade?
For upgrades, yes. I don't believe for existing installations. The language basically uses the disaster. The county's already declared in disaster by the governor, and then additional for other areas of the state as we have funding for.
I've got one county that's got a system of sirens in Comal County, but they're interested in a phase 2, which improves them. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Mendez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Bacon, first of all, thank you for doing this. One of the concerns or questions that I have is during the marathon hearing that we heard that the Upper Guadalupe River Authority had applied for a grant and that they had currently, I think, $3 million in reserves. And so I know that Flood Alley is longer than just there. I'm just wondering, in order for us to cover as much of the Texas Flood Alley as possible, if certain river authorities have funds that they had designated, would the granting process take into consideration that they had, or are we just going to address it, what do you envision how these monies are going to be allocated?
The history of this bill is quite simple.
Yeah.
A whole bunch of people, including the governor, lieutenant governor, thought of sirens as an idea within about a 12-hour period on Sunday after the tragic events of what happened on July 4th. The governor, lieutenant governor, and speaker have all said that we should have to get this job done within a year.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why the sub puts the grant program into the governor's office is so that things can be sped along, because there may be monies that need to go to TDM versus the water board, et cetera. And actually, we had multiple drafts of that bill that swung back and forth between those two groups. So I was kind of happy to hear that the governor's office wanted to take that responsibility, because it's important to be able to get those monies deployed as soon as possible. And to your specific question, the Upper Guadalupe River Authority had a grant, and Kerr County had stuff in the previous decade, and we'll leave that behind. They had a grant application in 2021. The Water Board granted them a 5% actual grant on $1 million plus a 30-year no interest-free loan for
Right.
30 years.
Right.
That was for 10 water crossing alert systems, which would have been sirens and I believe stanchions that would have come.
They were. We can talk about BRA in the next round, but it was related to more weather monitoring gauges, not really low water or otherwise. So.
Okay, so that one, however, they did not pursue that grant from that point because two reasons, quite frankly. One, I think they had a bias against this type of river warning system.
Yeah.
And in fact, if you remember the testimony, because I know Senator Blanco and we were all sitting there, I did bring up the president of the Upper Guadalupe River Authority, because he had basically made the comment that this type of system would not have saved any lives.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the data that he had just presented was that this wall of water was moving at 17 miles per hour and was 7 miles upstream. Mm-hmm. And simple Aggie math would tell you that would give 24 minutes for a system like that to work. To the chairman's comment, if it was tied into an existing gauge system,
Right.
then that would have given 24 minutes of warning. And then I proceeded to ask the emergency management coordinator, the sheriff, and the judge, because they had come up with that unfortunate bias in their conversation or their written comments, and they all recanted that. So that's really the history of this.
I remember, and I will. My thoughts are that we definitely need to put a system like this as fast as possible anywhere in Flood Alley, anywhere where we're prone to floods. My concern is that if we have parts of Texas whose river authorities don't have $3 million in their reserve accounts, that we don't use tax dollars for areas that can afford to pay for their own, and that's my concern, is just how do you apply it? Because it almost feels like we had the chair of the UGRA say that they didn't appreciate this, and now we're going to go fix their problem for them.
Well, they have revised their
Members, this river authority conversation will be had under SB 1, and it's totally disconnected from siren conversation.
All right.
And if
Thank
I could,
you.
Mr. Chairman, just one
Senator
quick.
Betancourt.
They've publicly said they're going to spend $1.5 million of that, but I'll yield to the chairman.
All right, thank you. That answers my
That's
question.
happened since the hearing.
That answers my question.
Right,
Thank you,
okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So I'll just do an umbrella. Everybody wants something tomorrow. Hurricane season's upon us. The practicality of doing a lot of this stuff just from strictly a supply chain issue and coordination makes it a challenge we should take on and do as efficiently and effectively as possible. Sirens will save lives, but sirens in themselves are not the total answer. Sirens have to be planned strategically and coordinated with other warning systems, or they're not worth the noise they make. So under the SB1 later, there is a whole panel of experts that know how to build out coordinated and attached systems so that they're all autonomous from human having to actually activate them. And so we'll get there. I hope we can get some things on the ground quick in that canyon area. You know, I'll just use Lubbock again as an example. We don't have canyon areas, but we have 45 sirens. It was $1 million, two-hour backup supply. Test them every month, I believe. So they're not unaffordable, but how and where you put those in that terrain is going to require some time. Just deployment in one where the wall blocks it once it goes and you only get an area of 50 yards is not going to be what we're looking for. You've got other considerations as far as broadband and communications that some of this stuff connects to. So it's going to require some coordination, but I was just talking to my staff that we intend to push really hard and really fast. But supply chain on some of this stuff is probably the slowest component. Thank you. All right, any questions for the bill author? Senator Blanco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator Bencourt. Great bill, really supported, very much needed. Just a quick question regarding the long-term maintenance of these systems. Will that fall on the municipalities or counties to maintain them long-term?
We had that debate because, as the chairman talked about, what you've got to do this is you're going to have communication towers to the sirens. You're going to have 5G, Starlink. You're going to have backups, et cetera. Right now, this is a grant program to do install and maintain and operate the siren. So I believe that that is contemplated with this. Part of the problem is that you can deploy a siren like this, but it is a technology that requires maintenance. And also what you want to avoid are effectively false negatives, where you've got an alert that occurs that really is not there, because that will knock down the public's public's confidence in this type of system. So, yes, there is maintenance required in this. And that's why I think the governor's office at this point in time on the grant is better to coordinate between TDM and the water board and the applicants at this point than really any other point in the government.
Great. Thank you.
Any other questions for Bill Arthur? Senator Flores.
Senator Betancourt, thank you for the bill. I just wanted to follow up on Senator Blanco's comments. So my main concern is whenever we have these type of programs that we don't have administration costs, what it costs to administer X number of FTEs, exceeding operational costs. I mean, we put in infrastructure, but if you don't maintain them, with the technicians and things of that nature, so what safeguards, what assurances can you give me that we're going we won't have administration costs that exceed operational costs?
If we have administration costs that exceed $50 million, then we're going to have a serious problem. Let me read
known to happen, so we want to make sure it doesn't happen.
Well, let me read the one line from the bill that addresses that, which is, it's item C on the grant program. The governor may delegate to a state agency the authority to administer the grant program established under the section. Knowing NIM Kids' penchant for efficiency, I can not necessarily speak for the director, but I would believe that would not occur. But that's something that the governor's office will have to watch. But TDM is extremely administratively light at the top end. So.
Thank you. I concur. Thank you.
Any other questions for Bill Arthur? Hearing none. Chair opens up public testimony on Senate Bill 2. Committee substitute Senate Bill 2. Chair calls up Kimberly Moyers, John Hoffman, Cyrus Reed, and Dakota Moyers.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, right.
Dakota Moyers.
He's outside with the kid.
She's where?
He's outside with my kid.
Okay, well, we'll move on with the three here, and if he can get up here before the panel's off, we'll be good. Let's go with you. Are you resource, John? No, you're for the bill. Okay. Let's go from here over. State your name, who you're with, position on the bill, please.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. My name is John Hoppin. For the record, I'm Executive Vice President for Water with the Lower Colorado River Authority. I'm here today testifying for the committee substitute for Senate Bill 2. Thank you for the opportunity to be here to talk about this important topic. LCRA, as you know, would provide services, a number of vital services for the state of Texas, including managing water supplies for our region, managing floods along the Highland Lakes, producing and delivering power, operating a telecommunications network, and providing parks and recreation areas, as well as supporting community development. As an entity with a long history of managing floods and flash flood alley, experience has taught us that conditions during flooding events can change very quickly. And Senate Bill 2 would make a real difference to protect lives and property. This bill would also give our local emergency coordinators and elected officials another tool in their toolbox for public notification. With all the testimony that we've heard at this committee, adding warning sirens at crucial points throughout Flash Flood Alley could make a real impact on public safety. We thank Senator Betancourt for your leadership on this issue, and thank you again for your opportunity to be here, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Cyrus.
Thank you. For the record, Cyrus Reed, Lone Star Chapter of the Sierra Club, in support of SB 2. I will say I haven't seen the committee substitute. I wanted to point out to the committee that in the 2024 state flood plan, the fourth recommendation from the board was prioritize and expand funding for implementing flood early warning systems on a regional scale with emphasis on rural areas, which I believe this bill does. I will say that regional word I think is important. There may be cases where it's not city and county, it's more of a watershed approach. And so to the extent you could allow that in the rules, I think would be important. The other is one that point I wanted to make, as Chairman, one you made, which is the early warning system by itself is not enough. It really needs to be tied into the flood gauges and monitoring the weather, et cetera. I assume that will come in other bills, but I'll just say the experience of the flooding of the Blanco. I think you know this, I've been very involved in Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. We were scheduled to go to summer camp in 2015 at Rancho Cima, which is on the Blanco and on the Devil's Backbone. That entire camp was destroyed by those floods. And I can say, having camped there previously and been right on the river and having had to move in certain occasions when there were flash floods, this is really important because you don't have good cell phone service in these canyons. And I can tell you other stories about being moved in state parks with Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts because of flooding. So I think this is really needed to save lives.
That was a 45-foot increase of a wall of water.
In 2015.
The largest on record.
Yeah, that was incredible. We weren't there, but I'm just pointing out that whole camp was destroyed, and making sure that we have these systems in place. But to be clear, SB 2 by itself is not enough, but it's an important first step. And I hope it is coordinated very carefully with the Water Development Board, because obviously they have the Flood Infrastructure Fund, they have additional funding. So we really need to coordinate all this funding and not create silos. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. All right, Kimberly.
Yes, sir. I'm a United States Navy veteran. We showed up as we were one of the first volunteers in all the unincorporated counties. And what we observed, I'm very pro of this. Thank you, Senator Betancourt. You are my senator. But what I saw in these unincorporated counties in particular, you can actually have all these systems set in place, but they still won't use them. And I was wondering if y'all could possibly put in a timeline once the grant is put in at the time they have to build and get it done, and hold these people accountable for actually using the system within our judges and our local government. And I was wondering if I could request that.
Can you state your name for the record and position on the bill?
Tycho Moyers. My position is yes.
Yep. All right. Thank you. Go ahead, Dakota.
Hello, my name is Dakota Moyers. I am for the bill, SB 2. I'll be the first to admit I'm not a native Texan. I grew up in Missouri, and I grew up in Tornado Alley. And I was actually very surprised that these systems were not put in place, because we've had these early warning sirens since the late 70s, early 80s. And I can tell you that even though there's still tons of property damage in my entire lifetime growing up there, we never had a loss of life for any kind of natural disaster that we had. I lived in Tornado Alley, and I lived in the Mississippi River Valley as well. We were accustomed to flooding too in that area. So I am support of these sirens. And yes, just like I don't know who said it earlier, but the maintenance is so important. The monthly testings, the actual people to take care of these systems and make sure that they are working, and the accountability to make sure they are used when they are needed.
Again, John, I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
So LCRA is a huge enterprise,
Yes.
financially and footprint and responsibilities, and you do a yeoman's job. To be clear. So the way I kind of looked at this coming into this after the flood was we kind of have a triage, intermediate, and long term. Everybody thinks, I think, and you can answer this as the question, sirens are triage, immediate right now. And I guess the question for you, y'all have sirens, correct?
We do not have
You do not have sirens. Okay. Maybe there isn't an expert in sirens here, but you do have a network of gauges and mesonet systems that is extensive. So in that regard, is there going to be a possible path forward here fairly quickly that we can effectively engage short-term, knowing intermediate and long-term, we'll have them all connected and coordinated? First question. Second question, I know in my area that there has to be a panel somewhere in Lubbock that has all of these connected, and the EMC guy just hits the button and they go off and test.
Right.
So is Kirk County, a county of 53,000 folks and stuff, are going to actually build out and manage and operate a system like this? Do they have the expertise or sophistication, or can they be trained to do that?
I think they can be trained to do it. I think you're initially going to have contracting entities to be able to come in and provide that type of construction activity, because there is some specialization, particularly with respect to locating gauges and how you locate gauges. And the gauges are key for any type of notification system that would be connected to it.
Right. And that technology, as far as connecting through Bluetooth, et cetera, exists today.
And gauge locations would be different. For example, like with our system is set up to operationalize the lakes, and it's fundamentally focused on how you find information that's going to drive floodgate operations
Right.
at our 6
Right.
dams. It's probably a different perspective if you're looking to locate a gauge to orient a siren that's for public safety warning purposes.
Right.
Now, we have the benefit of having had a system in place for a really long time, so all of our officials and our local emergency managers are keyed towards looking at those gauges, even though they were located for operational purposes.
Yeah. And you actually have the portal, if you will, where folks can dial in and see
Yes.
real time what's going on.
The interface.
Kind of in this conversation, SB1 will set up the mesonet guys and the modeler guys and all that, and they're going to be a work group. They came and volunteered what they can do, and we're fixing to put them to work yesterday. I think it's going to be critical, and I'm not sure we included a expert, if you will, at your level in that mix. They all understand the gauges, and they understand
Sure.
the connectivity, and they understand the data loads and things, but we may incorporate you, and I know they can go out there and pick people in this expertise when we start talking about these triggers. So
we have a lot of experience with respect to locating these things and the paradigm that we use them, and particularly with respect to locating gauges and setting up the gauge.
So but to be clear, you have your watershed.
Yes.
And the other river authorities have their watershed, and then there's some watersheds that really don't have a river authority. So
Correct.
And it is watershed based to stay consistent with the flood plan we put out.
Now, we do have some local entities up in the watershed that have begun to locate some sirens. I know we have one, I think, in Llano, and I think there was another one after the 2018 floods maybe put in place in Junction.
Well, I guess to sum it all up, I want to make sure that we do it as soon as we can, but I also want to do it with the vision of this may be temporary, not temporarily like pull them back out and start over, but whatever we do today will bleed into a more coordinated approach that may take longer than
I think your comment earlier was spot on with respect to one of the key limitations that you may have is supply chain related.
I think you're right. That's what I've been told anyway. All right. Thank you.
Chairman, if I could.
Senator Betancourt.
Thank you, John, and thanks for your comments. When we had testimony when the combined committee, you don't have sirens that do this effectively, this river warning, but you do have sirens on all downstream releases from the dams, right?
Yes, sir. Whenever we have a floodgate release, we will sound a siren at each of our dams.
Right, it's the same thing at Canyon Lake, by the way, so
Yes.
I just want to make sure so that
Yes.
we didn't leave the impression to the public we don't have any siren capability.
Downstream of the dams on the Highland Lakes, we have sirens.
Now, to the chairman's question, the bill has, importantly, has the board may consult with other entities when adopting rules and procedures to implement this section. So
Yes.
I certainly have, as authors intend, have you in mind, John,
Yes.
or at least the LCRA. It's important because by the time Lieutenant Governor asked me to look at this with you were already working with the governor's office on it.
Yes, sir.
Because of what the chairman has said, y'all's expertise, especially on integrating with a portal, those gauge reports. But what we're talking about here, because what I was going to tell Ms. Moya was this: the governor has said that this is going to be done in a year, and so. The fact that the governor's office is going to be doing these grants puts a little alacrity into this, that they will not, be wasting any time, John. So do you see any problem even with a supply chain shortage?
I think in terms of the way we conceptualize what you might want to do, it depends on the broadness of the scope and how big a bite of flash flood alley you want to take a look at. If you look at a very expansive version of this, and it could be 400 gauges and 100 warning sirens, and if you had that big of a bite, that's going to be a challenge to do in a year, mainly just because of being able to get the equipment that you need to be able to install.
Right. We had an East Texas city, I think it's Chisholm, that after the flood bought a siren on the 10th of July and had it installed by the 19th. But that's one siren.
That's not 100.
But I'm looking forward to y'all's participation because you've been quite a resource helping us develop this bill, and being the largest and most well-funded operation, we're going to be leaning on you.
Yeah, we worked on this information for y'all in between floods for us. We had our July 4th, July 5th event, and then
you had yours
right back. And
yeah,
yes,
right. So thank you so much,
Senator Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, John, did I hear you say that part of the LCRA's mission is to have plans for flooding and flash flooding?
Yes, ma'am.
To help the people that are in the area of the LCRA authority?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions for this panel? John, hang around. Cyrus, I'm glad you're feeling better. And Kimberly, thank you for all your volunteer efforts. I know you were engaged at a big level, so I appreciate you guys. And Dakota, too. It's a family affair.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you, guys. John, I don't know. I think SB1 may come up to where you're maybe needed. I don't know if you can hang around for resources. I'd appreciate it. All right. Chair calls. We have 3 resource witnesses. Chair calls Kenneth Flippin. We do have 3 resource witnesses, all from the Water Development Board. If members have questions, I might have a question for one of them. It doesn't matter which one. So specifically with related to coordination. So Matt, Brian McMath, Mike Nelson, and Carla Guthrie, either one of y'all 3. And another. Okay. Okay. All right. State your name herewith in 2 minutes and position on the bill, please.
Thank you. Kenneth Flippin, Texas chapter of the U.S. Green Building Council, definitely for the bill. Thank you, Chairman Perry. Thank you, Senator Betancourt. Thank you, members of the committee. We do think this is a good bill. Just a couple suggestions. First thing is it is really important to tie into the gauges. The second thing I would say is that it's important also, I think, to include low water crossings potentially in this. There are some that if we just look at this and how, like, flood deaths in Texas, most of them are low water crossings until we had this event. And now it's kind of balanced back out. But if we had this event in the middle of the day instead of the middle of the evening, we might have had a bus that was trying to cross a low water crossing. Especially in these rural areas, there can be so many that you don't really have enough police force out there. And so potentially looking at those low river crossings, low water crossings, as a place where these could be used to kind of grow our force and ability to keep people out of danger, that's a strong suggestion. The second thing is the reason why we need to have these gauges is because it's important for us to understand, no matter whether we accept the science of climate change, we can accept the science of precipitation. As temperatures go up, we know that rain intensity increases, and it's increasing now non-linearly, okay? So in other words, we're having that intensity. We know over the last 10 to 15 years, the climate change impacts have increased that intensity anywhere from 15 to 50%. And we know that's going to continue to increase. What does that mean? It means more frequent flooding and more flooding in those areas that we have frequent flooding. Those are going to get, instead of twice a year, they're going to get it 3 times a year. All of those places are the places where we need to think most about the future of where these warning systems can be placed. If we're gauging where that intensity is increasing, it'll improve our science and therefore our predictability for the future.
Thank you. Brian, state your name. Who you with?
Good morning, Chairman Perry, Vice Chair Flores, members of the committee. For the record, Brian McMath, Executive Administrator of the Texas Water Development Board.
Thank you, Brian. And this is going to kind of all, this is all tied together. We cannot make decisions in silos because we'll end up with a lot of money spent that didn't achieve a common purpose. So with that in mind, and first of all, I want to go back to Kenneth. You made a statement, and I want to be really careful how I answer or respond. Sirens are not the solution for low bridge water crossings for this reason. We have thousands of low bridge water crossings. And if every time one of those has water going over it, the community hears a siren, you will eliminate the effectiveness when you need. Sirens will need to be used when absolutely, unequivocally, no other action other than get to higher ground if you're in a flood zone or get to the basement or the bathtub if you're in a tornado zone. So, but I make this distinction for this reason. We have multiple issues in floods. We have flash floods and we have flooding. And then we have low river bridge crossings. Now, we'll talk about it through SB1, but low bridge river crossings are typically the canary in the coal mine that trouble's coming. We have options that we currently don't take advantage of having low bridge water crossings. And we heard testimony that when Schumacher Bridge was flooded, that's pretty much a tell that we got problems coming and nobody responded. So my point, I guess, is we will address those through the SB1 process by tying in TxDOT, which is currently the proprietor of low bridge water crossings. So they're all connected, but a siren for a low bridge water crossing is actually more detrimental long-term than beneficial. But you have to handle the low bridge separately and differently, but coordinated as a tell for the local community where the water's coming, that one of the low ridge water crossings that we typically know in history, if it floods, we may have flooding come down our way. And it can be a true asset. And had it been acknowledged for what they knew historically, we may have had a different outcome if people would have acted on it. So I just don't, I don't mean to, I'm not beating you up.
No,
I think education, that there's really multiple aspects of what went down in this place and what we can learn from it. Low bridge are a sign that things are coming, possibly. Thank you for that.
I agree.
So Brian, here's the, and again, you're going to be up here for SB1, and I keep going back to this panel of the weather experts because this is all starting with weather. I know there was a communication with my staff as who's leading this, and ultimately, I think the envision is Water Development Board is the single portal, if you will, no different than LCRA, from all of these new weather gauges, mesonet systems, not necessarily the sirens, but the sirens are connected out in the field. You don't have to know it, but on the local there, they've got that covered. But so tell me if you understand the task, and if I had to summarize your role going forward would be one, funding, truly, because governor's going to have grants and they're going to have to develop eligibilities and local sharing or non-sharing if that's their call, however that's going to work. So y'all will be involved in the funding stuff, which is what y'all do, but y'all already have a mesonet system. We're going to add more to that. We're going to add more to the West Texas mesonet. We're going to add more to others, and we're going to build out a gauge network. And I want you to think about it, and if you don't have an answer today, I'm envisioning through the SB1 process is ultimately the Water Development Board would be the gatherer, no different than an LCRA for their watershed that actually becomes the backbone for a state weather center, if you will. Does that make sense? And do you understand it that way, or do you have a different thought? Please share.
Certainly. So the Texas Mesonet system that you mentioned is a network of networks. We have our network, Texas Mesonet, that's part of that. Of course, we couple with West Texas Mesonet, LCRA. John Hoffman a couple weeks ago spoke to their HydroMet system. That's part of our network of networks. And that network of networks serves two primary purposes. Those Mesonet stations collect weather data. That data is sent to Synoptic, and that is the organization that the National Weather Service and others, emergency responders, can access the technical data. And we also have kind of a more public-facing portal, so to speak, the viewer. And that viewer, through your cell phone, through your laptop, anyone can look and see the measurements from those various stations. I'll admit I'm not the expert, but I think if there was an overarching effort by which there was some advanced forecasting done, that would need to be closely coordinated with the National Weather Service. I know that they may be having some limitations currently, but my understanding, especially in emergency moments or situations, they are the primary source that responders, the public, look to for kind of the authoritarian weather information. I think any effort we do with respect to gauging, with respect to additional mesonet stations, to enhance our ability to not only collect accurate, timely information and effectively disseminate that to the appropriate place for all of the people involved, but certainly the public, so they know what is happening, so if needed, they can get to a safe place. All of those efforts will combine to enhance our ability to respond. And I think Senator Betancourt's bill, Senate Bill 2, is an important piece to that. But as you mentioned, Chairman Perry, that's one piece to the puzzle.
So I want to get really clear. Y'all currently are a data hub for a lot of different folks.
Absolutely. So,
not modeler, not a forecaster, but a data hub.
Yes, sir.
To public facing can say, if I look on this website, public face is this bridge crossing with this gauge tells me it's overflowing. So y'all currently have that. What is your capacity internally to expand? Not necessarily new. Can you make it larger than it is for public facing? When I say public facing, I'm talking about your local emergency management teams. Those guys need access to the most relevant, timely, and then they can apply it to their regional. But if you've got low ridge bridge crossings eventually in that system, that's going to be relevant to their region.
Yes, sir.
So with some training, they could get to it. Do y'all have the capacity today? Or are you going to have significant amount of resource to expand the technology capacity, not people as much, but do you have the bandwidth, I guess, to add more input into that?
So just this last regular session, the legislature gave us nearly $1 million for Tex Mesonet enhancement.
I remember that.
That could include new stations, that include continued partnership with West Texas Mesonet, as well as some other related functions. But that doesn't build our network within our network of networks fully out. And so that might be an area, if additional resources are being considered, that we could enhance our network. Of course, those other partners within the network, I'll let them kind of speak to their needs, but there might be additional needs.
What I want to do in that coordination is if one was thinking about gauges and mesonet expansion and water development was thinking about gauges and mesonet expansion, do not duplicate. Coordinate.
We have the Texas Mesonet Advisory Council, and all of our partners participate in that, as well as National Weather Service. In fact, they just met earlier last week, and they meet regularly. And so, to your point, with respect to whether it's data collection and dissemination or the larger effort that we're all discussing here, emergency response and saving lives and saving property in the future, coordination is key. And I think you've heard that time and again.
Senator Betancourt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brian, thanks. And I'm looking forward to see the model runs and what we discussed that last time.
Yes, sir.
Later today. The one question that I was thinking about on the way up, and I see Nim in the back, so I'm not really sure which one of you all could do this, but we're talking about siren technology. I agree with the chairman. You have to make sure it's absolutely necessary because you might not want to use an audible siren at a low water crossing, but you might have a light.
Right.
Okay, I mean, these are kind of stuff that you need to discuss because I agree with him. You can't overuse the sirens. The reason why I thought about it is because this phone is so overloaded. And I guess my staff and I, we've read a bunch of these studies. And we found that Texans turn off their alarms 29.5% of the time, 6 times more than Vermonters. Now, that makes us either 6 times smarter or 6 times, too stressed for time. But it's an example of the regional differences in the country. And has anyone on your staff been looking at those studies? Because I still think that while we're going to get the siren technology deployed, we may also want to try to look at how we cut through the problem of just simply 18% of the people turn this off at night now.
Yes, sir.
And that may be part of SB1, but I just think that when Chairman Perry was talking about expanding it, I just think we need to really take a look at all these studies and make sure we're not missing the obvious on this cell phone technology.
Yes, sir.
That means about half of the people will not get an alert.
Yes, sir. Right. And I think that kind of speaks to your efforts in Senate Bill 2, tried and true, old-fashioned measures to help protect life and property. Why not? But if there are innovative solutions and advanced technology that we can enhance our ability, why not? I would suggest that the ultimate goal should be a comprehensive, well-coordinated solution. The way I think of this is the term emergency preparedness solutions, and that includes gauge networks, weather stations, low water crossing, whether it's barriers, flashing lights, what have you. Right. Early warning systems, emergency evacuation plans, so that when something happens, whether it's day or night, everyone is familiar with how to get to a safe place. Sirens, alerts, advanced radar, again, weather forecasting. Education and awareness was mentioned earlier. I think education is key. We all know that at a very basic level, but especially in emergency situations where lives are at stake.
Senator Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's really just 2 comments. One, you're right, and anybody, just frequent use of the same sound for an emergency, people will become desensitized to that, so at least maybe different sounds. Number 2, I wanted just to connect the dots with when I asked the question of LCRA, the responsibility of a river authority to people. LCRA does set people's safety as part of their mission, person's safety as part of the mission. Where when I asked that question of Upper Guadalupe River Authority in Kerr, the answer was no, it's the river. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for these 2 guys? Appreciate you being here. One of you guys, Brian, all 4 of you. I've got another Dina Green is Texas Water Development Board resource witness. Just hang around. One of you or all of you, but SB1 probably have some questions for you.
We'll be
Thanks,
here.
Kenneth.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against Committee Substitute Senate Bill 2? Hearing none, public testimony is closed. I'm going to transfer the gavel to Vice Chair Flores. As SB 13.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the chair calls up Senate Bill 13, recognizes Chairman Perry to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And SB 13 was passed out during the regular session, vetoed by the governor. Specifically, it grants or requires local political subdivisions to come up with a percentage as impact fee credits to be able to go towards innovative, and new water supply technologies. Examples may be affluent use on residentials back for irrigation in their lawns, not something that's simple and already known to be true. These are to create innovation throughout water supply techniques. So with that, members, I believe I do have a committee sub.
Senator Betancourt sends up committee substitute.
Committee substitute incorporates stakeholder feedback by changing the effective date to January 1, 26 to give effective political subdivisions more time to implement. I would follow up with that. If you come out with a 1% credit, the state will come back next session and determine what is an appropriate credit. So let's be rational and reasonable and be impactful. I understand y'all got budgets to make and development that needs growth dollars, but this is intended to put some money to supply areas where it makes sense to do it. Thank you for that.
Is there any objection to adopting substitute? Hearing none, substitute is adopted. Chair now opens up public testimony. Chair calls Cyrus Reed, J.D. Hale, Kenneth Flippen,
Just those. Is it just those three? Just those three?
So we'll start on my right. Say your name, who you represent. You have 2 minutes.
Yes, Ken Flippen, Texas chapter of the U.S. Green Building Council. Just want to point out, I think I know what the builders are going to say about this. They're going to be for it as well. And this is a bill that we all supported through the regular session. It was vetoed by the governor. Just want to point out, this is the kind of smart approach to allowing us to have our future developments be more water conservation. The water that we save is going to be less expensive than any new water that we try to produce in this state. And so by planning ahead and making sure our new developments are conserving water, we're actually thinking about the future of Texas. So that's why we strongly support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Name, who you represent.
Chairman, members, J.D. Hell, here on behalf of the nearly 10,000 home builders, remodelers, and associate members, Texas Association of Builders. Thank you, Chairman Perry, for bringing this bill forward again. You guys are looking at an endangered species here today. You get the home builders, Sierra Club, and the green builders all in favor of a bill. It doesn't happen very often, but this is an important issue for us. As Chairman Perry has said many times in hearings, if every Texan could save 1 gallon of water a day, that's a 36 to 38 million gallons of water saved a day. And this bill right here goes a long way to reward and incentivize builders who are trying to save that 1 gallon for each of the residents that they're providing homes for. So thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today and hear this again, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for the record. Good morning. Cyrus Reed, Lone Star Chapter of the Sierra Club, in favor of SB 13. Deja vu all over again. Chairman Perry, we're here to support the bill. We think that water conservation, water reuse is the lowest cost, most conservative approach to meeting our water needs, and we think this bill will provide an important incentive for builders to go beyond existing codes and technology to explore new ways to save water and reuse water, which also, frankly, could be helpful. You know, keeping water locally means hopefully it's not flooding downstream as well, so it could have that kind of impact. The one clarification we saw, and I think you made it in your layout, is just this is not intended to give people incentives if they're just meeting the codes that are on the books. This is really for doing innovative things and just making sure that legislative intent is there, because we don't want his friends to get a break just for meeting, you know, the current ordinance or the current code. We want it to be new, innovative approaches that are actually going to save water and wastewater, which means they shouldn't pay as high impact fees because they're saving that water and wastewater. So with that clarification, we very much support the bill.
Members, are there any questions? Any questions? Thank you all for your testimony.
Thank you.
I think that's it, man. All right.
The chair sees no one registered for public testimony. Is there anyone wishing to testify on, for, or against Senate Bill 13? Hearing none, public testimony is closed. We'll leave the bill pending. Chair calls up Senate Bill 1 and recognizes Chairman Perry to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 1, SB 1, Natural Disaster Omnibus Bill. As you know, the state suffered historic flooding in central West Texas and West Texas last month as resulted from 138 tragic loss of life. In aftermath, the committee was formed to ascertain the facts of the disaster. They identify the policy solutions that will prevent future loss of life due to flash flooding and other natural disasters in the future. Over the past 3 weeks, our committee convened two joint hearings, and our counterparts in the House took approximately 26 hours of invited and public testimony from over 80 witnesses. We convened our second joint hearing at the epicenter of the disaster in Kerr County, where many of us saw the devastation firsthand. Senate Bill 1 is a primary product of the work we performed the last few weeks, as well as the hearings and the public invited witness testimony. The bill is comprehensive omnibus legislation that addresses many of the concerns that have been brought to the committee's attention since July 4th. There is a committee substitute.
Senator Blanco introduces committee substitute for Senate Bill. Senator Blanco introduces committee substitute for Senate Bill 1. Recognize Senator Perry to explain the bill.
Yeah, I'll explain the sub. I'll explain the sub as I lay out the full bill. First of all, Senate Bill 1 is not specifically only related to floods. We found gaps in our emergency responses on the local levels, both in the way of coordination, leadership, and training. So you can take the bones of Senate Bill 1, which is anticipated or expected to create a network that we thought was in existence, and we thought people were familiar with it. We thought people were doing it. And there's fortunately areas of the state that may ever never need these. And I recognize the diversity of geography as well as weather patterns and things that some places may have them more often than not, but it is a universal system with respect to how we respond. Now, each individual disaster, be it flood, fire, tornado, hurricane, those are going to require very regionalized and very specific responses. So I have found in this role of about 15 years now that you almost want to be so prescriptive that there's no misunderstanding of what you do. I'm going to lay this out, and we're going to put this bill out today with the understanding that common sense didn't leave the room because SB 1 came into effect. And so when you're a local on the ground and you have your team in place and you've all been trained, but you know in your gut of gut that there's one other thing you need to do, and it wasn't very prescriptively outlined out, then do it. This is the problem with omnibus and these kind of issues. And I already heard pushback a little bit, which I was not surprised. But what ifs and the antidotes. And they were always rooted in, but I think we should. And if what we should is a better alternative than what you've been trained on right there at that moment because the rain fell differently than what we trained for, do it. So, but you will have a basic network to start from. So anybody that wants to evade, avoid, or work around because they don't want to do it, that's not acceptable going forward. Private or public sector, that's not acceptable. But specific to the event that's in front of you at that very moment, you have lots of discretion not to have to wait on somebody to come to your rescue if you can save people right then. And I shouldn't have to say it, but in this day and time, it seems like I have to say that. So with that, I'll lead in. I will tell you the heart and probably the biggest change that I believe is made in Senate Bill 1, and it's important for members to understand this as we lay this out and go through it. Currently, we have national weather systems that issue flash flood watch, flash flood warning, and flash flood emergency. They are the grantor of our response. They base it on a whole lot of different technologies, and then they will issue flash watch, flash flood warning, and flash flood emergency. We don't get to change those warnings. That is theirs. I'm not advocating we should change for all. They're ingrained. They're part of the system. They're part of the society. People understand that when you get one, they should do something. What is changing in SB1 specific to camps and those in the 100-year floodplain? If I'm a commercial enterprise and I've taken people under my tutelage to actually house them within that 100-year floodplain, at flash flood warning, you will shelter to higher ground or evacuate. I think it's a couple things. I think locals are resistant to issuing evac or other orders. This takes the discretion off of that. This takes the uncertainty of what I should do. Because what I found out was that flash flood warning, you may have as much as 3 hours if the inevitable flash flood emergency comes. 3 hours is a lifetime when you need to go to higher ground, because typically you can do it fairly quickly. So if you had to sum up SB1 and the substantive change, because all those warning systems are great, and we had some warning systems in place. But what we didn't have is leadership willing to do an evac call at the right time. So now it's not optional. The particular case was 1 o'clock, 1:14, I believe, flash flood warning. Had flash flood warning required them to shelter to higher ground, we would have a whole lot less of a tragedy today. I'm not second guessing why they didn't. I'm not second guessing what we've done. Going forward, if I had to name where we're going to be as a state, that will save lives going forward, because you don't have options at that point. Now, with that, I'll lay out SB1 that'll give you the tools that when you make that call, and you're going to make that call more than you're going to need it, and I'm not going to apologize for that. So, Senate Bill 1 specifically, I'll go by section. We've tried to break it up in sections. Some of the sections react within. We kind of created our own health and safety code for reasons in some areas, and then we expanded the government code in others. Specifically, to improve campground safety, the bill requires summer camps and RV parks in its original form. We did remove the RV parks in the sub from having to do some of the things, because that is kind of a private enterprise in the sense that it's hard for a camp owner to go in and require someone to hook their fifth wheel up and get the heck out of Dodge. We've accommodated a little differently. Adopt flash flood evacuations for all portions of campgrounds located within the 100-year floodplain. Activate the flash flood evacuation plan when flash flood warning is issued, and I want to qualify, and I want to make clear. I don't want to hear about camps that come up with a plan and check the box and put it in a file cabinet. For anybody that ever took a cruise, the first thing you do before you get to your cabin is do what's called a muster drill. These kids and these people in these camps will actually drill or have a lengthy conversation on the front end as to where higher ground is and what your response should be, preferably tied to a siren eventually. But you must not only have a plan, you must educate your campers on what that plan looks like. No different than kids going to a hallway under a tornado drill with their head between their knees. And if we find out different, you will lose your license. We're going to add that to an amendment to make that clear. You're going to have consequences for just checking boxes going forward. Additional to that, after touring Mystic and watching and seeing where water levels were and weren't, in the event that we missed it, we just didn't read the tea leaves right, the warning was wrong, and the rain dumped on top of us quicker than we thought, you're going to retrofit cabins with some access to rooftop. Because the kids and people that could get to higher places and rooftops was one of those examples given time and time again from some of the helicopter pilots, people picking up people. So you're going to go back and retrofit those. I don't care if it's internal access to the rooftop or external. That's obviously not the best case when weather events are going on. But if you know for a fact that 30 foot of water is coming down the mountain and there's nothing you can do about it, you've got to have a way to get to higher ground, and that's the last resort. That's not the first. because clearly being on a roof is not the best place, but it may be the only place. So that's what it does with campus safety. To ensure continuity of government in an emergency situation, SB 1 creates very specific lines of succession for county judges and mayors only with respect to the emergency management responsibilities under 418 of the government code. So typically that is your county judge. If it's a single unit, it's typically your county judge. These elected officials, we have to tie it to people that are accountable to the voters, will pick their emergency management coordinator. But I want someone that has a voice of the people electing them to be responsible for a designation who the management coordinator is, so that there is an accountability factor. If it's just someone that's an employee, that's a separation from non-accountability. So 418's changed. It will actually require a minimum licensures. We'll have 3 levels, basic, intermediate, and I don't remember what the third one was, but effectively these management coordinators can go through different licensing process. So if you're in an area that typically doesn't have disaster issue, you got a 40-hour basic course. Pretty minimum, but you're going to understand kind of coordination and what that could look like. For cities and counties that are separate on their team today, if they're under 68,750, which is the Medicaid designation for rural counties, we've used that consistently through some other things, you will be forced to be one. In a city and a county under 68,000, you run out of expertise really quick. And the political infighting that ensues at every political jurisdiction can't be had in a small city. So you will consolidate your team. If your currently city and county is separate under 68,750, you'll be one unit, so that when TDM and other resources come into your being, they got one place, one team, and one person to coordinate with, so that there's not this confusion of who's on first and what's on third. It was clearly a lack of leadership for different reasons, and I'm not saying some of them weren't legitimate reasons, but even had those people been there, truthfully listening to them, nobody really knew what they were supposed to be doing. So we're going to stop that, coordinate that, and require training for those folks. A large part of the bill was just of the peace of all things. So there's multiple sections. What we did there is give the JPs some discretion that in the event that there is life loss and mom and dad are trying to get their child back, in this case, that an autopsy conversation didn't pursue and install the ability to bring closure. We still grant them the expertise that if they think there might have been foul play before the event and it was just a way to hide the event, they've got that discretion. But we did some changes to that area of the code back in last session, so there's really 2 sections of the bill that accommodates what we changed in the transition period, and when it becomes new law, these things will kind of mirror that. So we've given JPs, and they will require training under the bill to understand what a disaster response looks like, so that we can be the most compassionate and empathetic at the time when people and families need it the most, and yet still try to be responsible to the bad actors that could be taking advantage of it. The bill requires TDM and DISH to develop a mass fatality response team that will incorporate the JP conversations. The bill allows TDM and DPS to neutralize drones operating over disaster areas. That was an issue. The bill facilitates natural disaster by expanding existing natural disaster loan recovery programs for macro businesses and small businesses. Upper Guadalupe River Authority will be required to go through sunset now. Again, they just came through that, but we want to have a conversation about leadership and what mission is. Clearly, they lost their mission. There's going to be a volunteer management capability. There's some software out there. Why that's important is multiple reasons. TDM raised a valid concern, unfortunately, in the times we live in, that some people may there with ulterior motives that are not conducive to helping folks. So they've asked for a volunteer management capacity in that. There's some software and some other things that can accommodate that. We'll do background checks on those that are signing up to volunteer. We'll also be able to log FEMA hours. So if you're having 17,000 volunteers show up and the hours they put, that counts towards credit to pull more FEMA dollars into the situation. It also builds a statewide volunteer base so that in the event there's a next disaster and you had to be an expertise of cadaver dog or diver related, they'll be able to find you as an individual with your contacts and call you and see if you can come. So it's a very robust eventual process that we can get to pretty quickly. I was told probably less than 60 days that's possible in the software world we have. So we're accommodating Tatum's request in that regard. I spoke to it earlier with Senate Bill 43. The meteorological teams that were on the panels, as well as the modelers that take the data from the meteorologist teams to model, say that there are technologies that will allow us to do better predicting of where a rain bomb event may occur. I remind people a rain bomb event is what was happening there at the Guadalupe, but it also was a Harvey related. It also was the floods in Wimberley. It's where a large cloud just dumps an excessive amount of rain in a very short period of time. They seem to be more frequent than they used to be, but they do believe that sonar technology that exists today, properly gauged and properly connected, can actually give a more precise place of where those possibilities, so that flash flood warnings may not always be negative, that if you have a little bit better prediction. Spoke to low bridge water crossings. The team that will comprise that on putting these gauges in place, Water Development Board, West Texas, also will be working with the modelers out of Rice, A&M, and UT Arlington. Texas Water Development Board will be on that team. TDM will be on that team, and Texas Department of Transportation to coordinate the low bridge water crossings into this conversation from the get-go, so that should all come together with a more robust data input to work from. Committee sub. Perhaps most ambitiously, Senate Bill 1 is designed to improve our state's ability to monitor, predict. It's developing a statewide hub. The committee subs makes two changes. First, the committee sub affirmatively requires campgrounds to give a copy of their flash flood evacuation plans to the local emergency managers, and if they are youth camps, to dishes. Second, the committee sub implements several edits suggested by TDM to reduce administrative burdens and provide flexibility during emergency situations. These edits achieve staff savings primarily by utilizing the existing licensing staff at Commission on Fire Protection for licensure of emergency management coordinators, but the required training will still be developed by TDM. Additionally, I'm requiring an annual 1 year, every year, once a year, actual drill. Not a tabletop conversation, not a hypothetical on paper, but you will actually drill in these areas with a TDM representative on site for critique. You don't get to have a plan and say we have a plan and we never actually tested the plan. I will tell you, having seen cities that do the test, Lubbock specifically, it is in sync. It is seamless. Those guys are hitting in all cylinders. Everybody knows their role. Everybody knows. San Angelo, Texas, 1,700 structures affected by this last run, one fatality. They had debris removal teams contracted before the disaster, and within 2 weeks, they were having debris removed off their streets and out to the dump because they had teams in there actually mucking out the houses, NGOs, places. So how you coordinate and how you respond is directly proportional to how long the recovery is going to be. And so it can be done. It can be done with thought and planning, but you will be required to drill, and TDM will be required to effectively be there to make sure you're doing it. That said, as I stated earlier, all this stuff should already be in place. And so if I start getting fiscal notes and things that are just outrageous and mandate conversations that we can't afford to do this, you should have already been doing this. And it should be required very little additional resources. The state will be open and accommodate if and when it makes sense to do it, but this is not new stuff. because you haven't done it doesn't mean you can't do it if it costs a little money to do it, because you should have been budgeting for this for the last 30 years. Every year you should have been doing this. So that's where I'm at with SB1. Members will be glad to take questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The question on the adoption of Committee Substitute Senate Bill 1. Is there any objection? Hearing none. Substitute is adopted. Chair recognizes Senator Schwartner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Perry, thank you for your layout and for your hard work and the staff and your staff and TDM and everybody else. I just wanted to kind of hone in on decision-making. On page 8 and 9, it makes it very clear regarding who level and city level. There, county level, it's the judge and then the sheriff, then the county commissioner with the longest serving time frame, and then the city level, it's the mayor pro tem, a marshal of the city if they're elected, and then the member of the governing board with the longest period. So that's very, very clear and very, very appropriate to make sure we have appropriate decision making. Regarding small counties, at 68,750, that's about 200 counties, correct? That would have to have a unified emergency management.
I would say so. I didn't do the math, but it's probably that's probably a good number.
Okay, but it doesn't really delineate who actually would be in charge there. I assume it's left up at the local county level as to whether a mayor, for instance, of a large city like at Kerrville versus the county judge in Kerr County would be the actual decision maker in a small county when it comes to incorporating the various jurisdictions. So what do you envision there?
So typically county gets jurisdiction because county is responsible for more cities. If it's a single county, a county with a single city event, that deference may switch between it. But to be clear, I think history is county judge is your first go-to.
But the statute, as written here in the bill, that would not require that.
Does not require it.
Okay.
And I'll use Lubbock as a good example. Lubbock County's 310,000 people, multiple cities in it. I talked to my city and county. They are split, but they're 300,000 county. Right. And the county judge and I talked, and I think what they do internally, if it's 100% specific to Lubbock, Texas, the county judge is still kind of in the conversation, but if the mayor is kind of taking the lead, they kind of step aside. It's kind of that. But
understood, right. Very good. I just wanted to clarify the decision-making process, and I appreciate the very increased clarity regarding that in your piece of legislation.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Senator Kokhorst.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chairman Perry, for your hard work, that of your staff. I thought that the public hearings were extremely important, both the ones we had here, but in Kerrville, being able to hear from the locals, but also to then have the variation of so many counties, and then the public testimony specifically. And I was very impacted by the mother from Houston, whose two sons were at Camp La Junta, and they both survived, but one who survived by being in the rafters of his cabin, and she and I had a long talk, and we have also devised, as I sent a text message to you yesterday, the mental health approach and how we can be helping those. So I see Blair Walsh in the back of the room, and she and I had a meeting this week, and I think it's true to say that when you've seen one disaster, you've seen one disaster, and every one of them is different. So I appreciate that the approach to this bill, similar to the approaches that we had after Harvey, Senate Bills 6, 7, and 8, you've picked up on some of that stuff, and I appreciate that very, very much, and we have to continue to follow through. Specifically, I want to go to page 25 in the bill, which Senate Bill 1 in the committee substitute is what I'm working off of, creates a new chapter in the Health and Safety Code, which is campground safety. And I think that's a very good approach. You and I have talked a couple of times, and as Chair of Health and Human Services, obviously I work in the Health and Safety Code a lot, and the camps are typically covered under Chapter 141 of the Health and Safety Code. I filed Senate Bill 60, which kind of stayed in chapter 141. I like your approach to create the new chapter on campgrounds, but as we work through this process, go to the floor, I'd like to work with you on some of the points that you made about muster points and some of the stuff that I've heard from the parents. I represent parents that were in that, who lost children in that flood, and also those that had children that survived that flood, and getting their input. Something that I think we can strengthen 141 specifically. And I think that we do need to tie it to the renewal of the license for the camps in working with that. So I look forward to working with you possibly on an amendment on the floor for, as you say, common sense. And one of the things that the emergency management coordinator said during our hearing in Kerrville was specifically when I asked the question, how many of the camps do you have evacuation plans for? And his answer was 6 of 19. And I do think that maybe 19 have plans, maybe they don't. But we need to have that not only on file with them, but to let parents know that they actually have those plans. And like you say, don't check the box. And it's got to be a coordination. Parents should be able to ask for those evacuation plans. I don't necessarily want to put those on the website of the camps because I think that's a safety issue. We live in these times, as you say. So in working with so many of y'all, not only on this dais, but people, the parents specifically, I look forward to building upon what you've got here because it's a very good bill and very good start. One of the other areas I want to touch on is the volunteer aspect. And so it seems like in every disaster, the wonderful thing about Texas is we have huge hearts and people that want to give, and they want to run to the fire. And I love that about that. And so the input that I received was, this call started on July the 5th. I want to go volunteer. What do I do? And sometimes that's not an easy answer, and we're working through that. So you lay out in this kind of a database, and a database that could be ongoing that, hey, you're in the database, go to work. But one of the things that I was kind of curious about is I also don't want to deter the volunteers, and there's a lot of criminal background checks. So can you just talk to me about your theory on that?
Well, I mean, you said it is the times we're in. So I had some concerns. I don't want to discourage, but I was reminded standing out there looking at the river with a team from New York State with their cadaver dogs and diver teams looking for bodies. And the comment was made that, as well-meaning as some of the volunteers were, moving debris early, because debris is psychological.
It is.
It is probably the longest lasting, and people look out there every day and see it. And it's just a reminder. But in their zeal to help with skid steers and other heavy equipment, they actually packed down silt that literally, possibly, and probably, and was burying bodies. So that was a stark reminder that this is not as easy as everything is. It usually is not. That coordination is critical. But back to what I think Tatum's saying, and I used an analogy with my staff. I said, so what do we do with like the Cajun Brigade? They were tremendous. The rivers and the flooding and stuff back in Harvey days, that's kind of where they came to fruition. And this is not going to discourage those groups, if you will. And I said it's really a timing thing, right? You got everything until state and resources get there. You got a lot of people doing. So I didn't want an authoritarian walking by and say, show me your badge. And if you don't have it, even though you've been working for the last 36 hours doing great things, you're out. That's not what the intent is. That's not what Tatum's intent is. They're not going to walk around once everybody that they know about is credentialed, go around and kick people off. But if you come through the center asking, and hopefully most of them do, I'm here, what do you need me to do? You're going to be put through the process. If you're an organized Samaritans group, you can start, but they kind of want you in there, right? So it's that fine line and that balance, and hopefully and mostly we don't have to worry about this on an issue. But you have one bad person do something really bad, then it ruins the whole thing. So it's not intentional to discourage, it's try to find that balance, and it also provides a huge resource, not only for Tatum, but a whole lot of other workforce applications across the state eventually.
Right. So, and I want to build on that just for a second. And again, I see Chief Kidd in the back of the room, and thank you for your great service.
Chief, can you come up and we'll just ask? I'm talking for you. I want to hear your intent. I want to hear it clear. I want you to address how we find the balance.
Chairman, if I could just kind of say this, because I have to say this. Man, Harvey, I can still get emotional about Harvey. It was horrendous. And like you said, we had volunteers. When Harvey came ashore, the eye of the storm came across Port Aransas and right there between Rockport and Port A, and, goes up to Victoria, then backs out, goes back in and goes to Houston and Fort Bend County. And we had volunteers literally rescuing people. Right. I know these volunteers. They got their boats. A guy that manages one of my lakes, y'all know I'm an outdoorsman. He literally took all of his boats down there and were rescuing people. So I want to give one more because I think it's very poignant. When I finally got to Rockport Fulton, again, at one point, DPS said the lieutenant governor and I were going to go, and DPS called us and said, we're not going to allow you to go. Literally, the eye of the storm is still there, and I couldn't believe that Big 2 News had made it to Rockport and we couldn't, but that's how it goes. And so when I finally got there and I was driving the neighborhoods and I stopped to meet with some volunteers that were literally cutting up trees and that were down on driveways and everything else, and introduced myself. And this was a crew that had come, workers from the King Ranch. And I said, what are y'all doing? And they go, we're just here to help. And I ran into the gentleman, believe it or not, at the Texas Wildlife Association annual conference in San Antonio. And he said, do you remember meeting me? And I said, well, help me. I meet a lot of people. And I said, yes, you and your crew were cutting up trees. So I say all of that to say, if you've seen one disaster, you've seen one disaster. In Harvey, down in Rockport, Fulton, Aransas County, Port A, we weren't looking for bodies. We were just trying to start to rebuild. So those are the questions, Chief. And I want to make sure that we don't become the police state and say, no, government does everything, because Texas and Texans do incredible work. And I also want to say this, in part, your testimony, Chief, when we met our first hearing, the joint hearing with our House colleagues, was you said we can take some of this volunteer work and we can add it to the 25%, and that's super important in how we track that. But I know people that came from Senate District 18 and how they described, and I want to say this about Kerr County and everybody that went down there, and they set up, we have a fuel distributor that set up at the Hunt store. And I had a volunteer from Washington County say, you would just go there and they would fill up your tank and no questions asked. You didn't pay for anything. It was just given, fuel that was given, diesel that was just there. And that is incredible, unbelievable. And so what I want to make sure is what you're trying to do, like you say, is we're trying to split hairs here. Whether we're in the health and safety code, which we deal with, you and I, in one committee, or this volunteer. And Chief, I'm going to let you talk, but in Senate Bill 6 we talked about this. And again, we get better after every disaster. But you've seen one disaster, you've seen one disaster. God and Mother Nature continues to teach us something, as one lady said in Kerrville.
So, Chief, state your name and who you're with.
Good morning. Nim Kidd, Chief of the Division of Emergencies.
So to be specific, I equate the background check no different than if you purchase a gun. Nothing's kept on an individual for the background check, correct?
That's correct.
It would only be state. Pull that mic up there closer. It would only be state checking is my understanding because we don't tie into the NCIS database check. Is that true or not true?
I believe there is provisions in the first language. I did not see it in the second version that was just introduced about also FBI background checks.
Yeah, and I think on the
Pull that up a
fingerprinting.
little bit, Chief. Just a little bit more. There you go.
So
how's this?
I've had a
Don't
couple.
hear on my left ear anymore. Sorry.
I've had a couple of calls about fingerprinting, and that was a different section. That's not anything to do with volunteers. That was, and we pulled that fingerprinting piece out. That was more for your emergency management coordination and team and that kind of stuff.
Yes, sir.
So specifically today, state how practical, not theoretical, but practically speaking, how do we let the people that are there work and do what they're doing and continue to do, and track people that you have a legitimate concern about? And are there going to be people that never get in your system that's going to get to work there?
So again, thank you for your important work on this question, on this topic, and I will answer your questions. First, I will say there will never be enough government responders to take care of all of us at the same time, nor should there be.
Right.
There shouldn't be. We will always need volunteers. We will always want volunteers, and the Texas Recovery Mission is built on the backs of volunteers. This is no intent to dissuade or discourage volunteers from participating in disaster preparedness, response, or recovery. I will tell you, this is also about safety. Safety of the volunteers, safety of the citizens, and safety of the responders. It is about keeping a disaster organized from the beginning as early as possible. There are stories around the emergency management community that every disaster comes in threes.
Yes.
The event, the volunteers, and the spontaneous donations. And for every event that each of you have participated in, there has been the disaster. There have been the spontaneous volunteers that showed up, well-meaning, well-intended, but some of them didn't even pack their teddy bears or their toothbrushes, and they become more of a burden on the response. And then the donations that show up. So specifically, you're asking about the volunteers and a registry of volunteers and why they would need to be background checked. I can tell you that all licensed and certified responders that are responding into your home, picking up your weapons, picking up your jewelry, going through your family's belongings, have been background checked and they're licensed or certified to do that job. Should we allow non-licensed, certified, credentialed background check volunteers to walk through every aspect of your life whenever it's scattered down the street or down the river? I don't think we should, and that's my professional opinion right now. So what does that look like? It does not mean to keep volunteers from showing up. It doesn't. But an organized volunteer and an organized volunteer group is a powerful source, ones that we want to use and harness and continue to assign. We also have volunteers that show up with their chainsaws, just wanting to help. Senator, I appreciate that. I was trained as a firefighter on how to use a chainsaw, not to cut down trees, but how to get into buildings. There's a difference in how we use it. A very close friend of mine in the Wimberley floods was critically injured by somebody using a chainsaw that didn't know how to do it. That's a problem. We can do better than this, and the way we do better than this is by organize the volunteers. We register them. We hopefully get them into some longer-term spontaneous group. A lot of the things that you mentioned about the donations management, the cash piece of this, and the $25 to $35 per hour of volunteer labor that goes back to that local community, that is game-changing for future budgets. But I do believe we should, when volunteers come in, and an analogy I used the other day I'd like to use again if I can have just a second of this. Two 15-passenger vans, doctor, head-on collision, right in front of us all right now. We're all watching this right now. And as we all run up to that scene, every volunteer that's there is going to help. Different backgrounds, different skills, different experiences, different capabilities, but we need every one of us to go and take care of the 30 people that were just impacted by that event. Pretty soon, a police car will probably show up, licensed and specialized. A fire truck should show up, an ambulance should show up, a tow truck should show up, and maybe if there was damage to the infrastructure there, Public Works is going to show up. At some point, those volunteers that rushed in will probably be asked to step back or start moving away, so the higher level of care, the higher level of capability, the higher level of legal and statutory authority can intervene in this. Disaster response really isn't any different. I need volunteers right when it starts. I need them to get there as fast as they can, but I need them to work within the organizational structure to reduce the confusion, to reduce the mysterious chains of commands of who's in charge and who's responsible. If we get them to a volunteer reception center set up within the first 12 hours of the event, now they're checking in. Now I'm getting to see who they are. I'm hopefully getting their cell phone number. Why do I want their cell phone number? Because if they're in the middle of the event and I need to communicate with them that something bad is getting ready to happen, now I have the way to do that. I can send out a notification to them. Right now, man, that only happens if you go and you check in. So what I'm asking for is your consideration, and should this be a mandatory process? Should we have volunteer reception centers, and should we know the people that are helping us on the disaster response?
So to follow up, Mr. Chairman, Chief, I hear you, okay? My question to you would be, or the chairman, the author of the bill, would be this. So let's just say the property owner, is there, or it has family close or knows people, call, hey, how can I help you in Rockport Fulton? Hey, go down and start to muck the sheetrock, whatever. Does that person have to have permission to go to my own property?
I wouldn't think so. If they're on your property and you've called them and you've asked for their help, if they're friends or family or neighbors that you know, I don't necessarily need their information.
Right. So that's one of the things that, I just want us to be very careful that we do not become discouraging to these volunteers, because I really, as you say, we need them, and it's free labor, and it's labor that is, I would say, 99.99999% out of love and concern for our fellow Texans. And so as we work through this, and I know we're going to get something out there, hopefully in this session, we're going to get these bills voted on the governor's desk. We need to keep working on this and keep tweaking, because we thought, we made those changes, and I've been asked by constituents, are we good enough? Are we do? You go back with me to Harvey. You were domiciled inside of DPS, your department, not you. You were, but the agency was. We made the change. We made you the 8th Aggie agency. So we progress after every major disaster. But it's. I see that there's some language in there that you may waive this, and you may do those things, because in an emergency like Harvey, what happened in Harrison, Fort Bend County, and other parts, but really in those two counties, we had volunteers that ran to the fire, ran to the flood, ran there to save people, and they did.
Yes, ma'am.
They did.
And Senator, would you believe that when people are forced to evacuate into a shelter, that they're very vulnerable?
Very.
Sure.
Should we ensure that there are no registered sex offenders or others with a criminal history or criminal background volunteering in that shelter?
Well, Senator Bentoncourt's been trying to do that in public education as well.
So I want to try to move on a little bit. Here's a question direct,
yes, sir.
And it doesn't solve the issue totality. Human nature, you can't fix everything with writing of paper, but it is not your intent. Let me phrase it this way: it is not the intent of TDM to have enforcement of some sort through whatever means of going out and surveying volunteers, that if they don't have the magic, I don't know if they're going to get a badge or get something that's visible, that I've been certified and you aren't. It's not your intent to go out and police that.
Senator,
If it is, say it is.
yeah, well, I'm
Just say it is, and
I'm
that'll
a
answer
killer.
some questions.
Yep. I think there are points in time on every disaster that you would turn it over to the licensed certified professional responders for the event. And I think each disaster is a different point in time. And in each of those disasters, you will still need volunteers, but I need volunteers that are working within the system, supporting the mission.
So the answer is
doing their
yes. At some point in the first 12 hours in your scenario is exactly what we're talking about. We don't want to discourage those first responders, even on a volunteer basis, that may have something to offer. I get it. So yes, we would expect it to be a certain amount of group doing specific things long term. So yes, you would have an enforcement. I think each disaster would clearly make that distinction on its own, practically speaking.
And Senator, if I can add, there'll be volunteers in Kerr County for years.
No, I get that. And then it kind of comes with community things. Secondly, if I'm with Texas Baptist Men's Ministry and I'm coming in to muck out houses, you would want every team member of Texas Baptist Ministry to be registered as an individual with this database or not?
Not necessarily, because they are part of the statewide VOAD, the volunteer organization.
Let's talk real quickly. There is a designated group of groups that's already effectively pre-cleared.
Yes, sir.
And they're not required to go through because you make a call to their leadership that says, please help.
Because they're part of the organized solution, not the spontaneous
So
volunteer.
in that frame, is it fair to say that the majority of NGOs, the Good Samaritans, the Texas Baptist Men's, the Red Crosses, and all those groups are the majority of post cleanup? You know, I know multiple crews go in and do muck outs, but they're in the organization. What I'm trying to get to is, if I've been certified effectively from one of these other groups' perspectives, I don't have to do it at Texas. And that's going to eliminate a lot of angst, I think.
If you're coming in with that group, I wouldn't see you need to do it.
Okay.
If you're coming in outside of that group to do something different than what that
you.
group is part of the system, then we should have the conversation.
Chairman, you probably need to maybe add some language. That was a good exchange, Mr. Chairman. Last question again. I need to make sure that if it's my private property and I have volunteers coming in, I don't necessarily want them, to have a badge if it's my family or friends from Fort Worth or whatever. And I think we have to figure out, my private property, I can have whatever volunteers I want on my private property. Couldn't I, if it's my private property after a disaster?
I would say if it's your property, you should have whoever you want there helping you in your response
and so how we work through that is a question. But I look forward to working with y'all. I think it's a great start. We need that database. We've talked about it for a long time, and this is the beginning, but devil's in those details. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Schwartner.
Yes. Can y'all hear me? Yeah. Just been listening to this conversation. I have some of the same concerns or thoughts, I believe, that Senator Colcourse has regarding the perfect getting in the way of the immediate necessity for good being provided by a group of individuals. Yes, there's always potential for bad individuals in the chaos and difficulty of setting up an emergency response. But having a welcoming center and giving a badge, you wonder who's actually going to be, if there are going to be enough people to qualify people to be badged and undergo a background check. And then the rigidness of which some people interpret things gets in the way of actually the volunteers being effective, and then that causes a backlash we saw that in Kerr County regarding some backlash against the state. I certainly don't want Texans to feel disincentivized, and I know you don't want to either, but that's just the practicality of too rigid of a structure in which you have to go to the Welcome Center, get a little badge, go out, pre-position. It just, it seems like when you have a natural disaster, the first 48 hours, are chaos, and so you do what you can, understanding there's all sorts of potential bad things that can occur during that time frame. But I don't know. We need background checks. I'm not a big proponent of it, but I appreciate your discussion. I just wanted to add that to the thought.
Senator Betancourt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good discussion. And you made a comment about vulnerability of people in shelters. I learned this when I was part of the EOC, and I think Vice Chair Flores was part of that too, at Katrina and the Astrodome, because within just 48 hours of that, really, monumental project that Judge Eccles started, the gangs from New Orleans were trying to reestablish themselves on the floor with berets, the whole routine, and we had to literally bust them all out of the center. So whatever we do, we have to understand that the good that we're trying to do for those people that are in shelters is followed very quickly by the bad. Am I missing something?
No, so you're not.
And I want to go to page 16 if I could, and this may be Senator Perry for you. It's item 3. It's coordinate volunteer programs by local governments to ensure programs align with state standards and requirements. If I remember Harris County, and I haven't seen Mark Sloan in a long time, so I don't know if he's still there or not.
He is.
He has a large volunteer coordination system that's maintained. So would it be, Director Kidd, your intention to upload that data effectively? Are we going to try to use these existing programs? Because I want to say at one time he had tens of thousands of people in that database.
He does. It's the Community Emergency Response Team, the search team. And again, all volunteers get to retain their rights too. Nobody gets run or gets a background check without their permission, right? But for those organized groups like you're talking about, many of them have already undergone this process. Many of them are already doing this. You can't go and register with some of these groups without them knowing who you are. What this is aimed at is the great-hearted, and I do not want to discourage them, the spontaneous volunteers that just show up. And I'll give you another example, is we had a lot of great volunteers that came out in Kerrville. They did great work. Many of them stopped at aid stations along the way, and those aid stations were giving out water, giving out Band-Aids, starting IVs, to the point where we have no idea who the spontaneous volunteers that showed up, their medical background, their medical license, their certification to do this. How do we protect our volunteers if we don't know who is also volunteering and giving IV therapy on the side of the creek to people and then putting them right back in? And so there has to be a way to organize the spontaneous volunteers. And so if there's some language that needs to be changed, maybe it's not the volunteer groups. Maybe we set those aside because we know they have standards for being a volunteer. But it's the people that drive, not just from Texas, but from all over the nation to come in and support us. And how do we ensure that the right people are doing the right job with the right authority?
And that's the last question, because I do share Senator Colcourt, Senator Schwartner's concern about this. In my case, in Harvey, Senator Hughes and Representative Cole got their bass boat rig and drove down from the East Texas Navy and were rescuing people in the precinct next to me, found out that I had lived right next door, and they drove their bass boat up and parked at the Betancourt Marina because that was the only subdivision, by the grace of God, that was 8 inches above the 500-foot floodplain. Now, I bring that up because there were people from Oklahoma they were staying with. We have these people that come in from town, and I think Senator Hughes and Representative Cole rescued 36 people. I'm going from memory. I can't remember exactly. But so how do we weave this together? Because they wouldn't have been part of Mark Sloan's database, but they are responsible people. Now, if I'm getting an IV by a riverbank, I want it to be at Dr. Campbell's level of expertise, okay, if possible. And so I'm trying to, this is the line point that I think Chairman Perry was asking you.
And Senator, I think each disaster is different. That time frame of when everybody come and everybody help until, hey, let's get our arms wrapped around this and get this better organized and know who is where, that will be dependent upon each individual disaster response in coordination with the local and state officials.
Thank you.
Senator Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, first I want to ask, ask Senator Perry, will there be dollars granted to build new bridges over low water crossings?
That's not specific to, haven't seen SB3. It's currently in process. I would answer that. That's a text dot request, probably for future, but I don't know that this does that. We have 20, I'm going to quote a number if I'm wrong. Text dot can correct me, 28,000 low ridge, 25,000 low bridge.
That's a lot.
We have a lot of bridges.
Yep.
And remember, a lot of these are out in the middle of absolutely nowhere,
Right.
where the only farmer that crosses it knows better than to cross it, because for 100 years his family knows not to cross it. So there's a lot of those.
Right. Maybe we can look at some that are more.
The ones that are more common, that are closer to flash flood alley or contribute, that would be priorities. The key to this whole bill is going to be, where do we go first? Well, we're going to hit the areas that we know with hurricane season coming up. If there's something we can do today that hopefully prevents some of this, we're going to prioritize our priorities.
And that's perfect. That's what we should do. And thank you for all the work that you've done.
No problem.
Especially with our house. I wanted to ask or say, it's much needed, the line of succession in command, as was recommended by Chief Nim Kidd, and especially to educate the emergency management coordinator. You know, we talk a lot about Kerr, as we should, but there was also Sandy Creek flood that happened in Travis County, and that was going on at the same time. It wasn't because of Guadalupe River. It was because the weather pattern had just stalled over Sandy Creek, which normally is just a small creek, and it became a roaring flood. And while it's not known, that familiar to everybody, 9 neighbors died in a short period of time. And that's an example of where the great volunteers, and 4 are here today, Melanie Strong, who lives up to her last name Strong, Eric Jones, Auburn Gallagher, and Ashley Willis. And Ashley, make sure you say hello to Mama B for me. But they're the volunteers, came out initially. They were the initial responders there, waiting for the emergency. And they continue to help today. And then another point that's a problem is the funding. Now, let me say I don't know what percentage, but the people that live at Sandy Creek, those homes that were washed out were their primary home. It was not a second, it wasn't a cabin that you go to for, intermittently. And the funding, trying to get dollars to those folks, is still a problem, Chief. So if you can address that with them, how they can get funding that more direct, I'd sure appreciate it. And with that, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much.
That funding is typically a year out from any conversation of any funding at all that's available. I've said it before and I'll say it again. The federal government and the state government has no funding to replace homes, unfortunately. Through FEMA, ultimately, there are monies that do go to individual assistance that can help, but that money is typically a long way out, and I think part of our job is to set some expectations, and Chief Kidd can elaborate, but that usually goes through GLO, and there's a whole lot of things attached to it and things that you got to jump through to get it, but it's not going to be here today.
Right.
So as we have the conversation and people that literally lost their homes that have no insurance, hopefully help will come quicker than normal, but in the normal processes, the historical context that I have with Harvey specifically, that was a long-term initiative.
And that's what I found too, Mr. Chairman. But what we wonder, what I wonder, which I think a lot of people wonder, millions were raised by Fox News. I mean, this and that. There's all these communities or organizations that say donate. They give a QR code, donate for the victims of the flood. I don't know if they keep that money, and if you want to speak quickly, I don't need anything, quickly to those that are opportunists on the people that have lost their home. But what happens to the legit folks that really do donate? Where does that money go? That's not federal. There shouldn't be that much bureaucratic red tape. Where does that money go? And with that answer, I'll question, I'll end. But if you can address that, that would be great.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So as of yesterday, FEMA, through their individual and household programs, has put out $22.7 million across the state of Texas. That's not just Kerr County, that's all of the impacted counties. I think that's 6 of them in the individual assistance program. And $22 million sounds like a lot of money, but whenever you look at the 8,000 people that have signed up for it and do the math on that, that's not a whole lot of money to each individual. To your point, Senator Perry, FEMA does not do long-term permanent housing. It's not in their mission, it's not in their charge, it's not in their legislation prohibits them from doing that. What they can do is help with small repairs and small amounts of money going quick. Senator, your question about the donations and the volunteers, I think last session, come effect on September 1st, there was a bill about GoFundMe accounts.
Yes.
I think that will help us, but probably needs a little more teeth to it, a little more clarity. It says that you can't do it, but it doesn't say us what happens when you do it. Early on in this event, we found 90 different GoFundMe accounts that were going dedicated to the flooding, and we have no idea where that money went, who's getting that money, or what they're doing with that money. It is outside of any government purview at this point. And I'm not saying we should control it. I'm not. But to your point, how do we know that the money that I'm giving is actually going to the people that need it? Which is, again, why recognized volunteer groups, recognized donations should be the place that you send your money first, not to some pop-up organization that you can't validate.
We sure need to educate Texans on where to donate.
Yes, ma'am.
Because you have to thank the Texans that rose to the occasion, as they always do, to help their fellow Texan. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Blanco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank Chairman Perry for how thorough this bill is. Excellent bill. And I want to go to the section of the line of succession because it's very important. And Senator Schwartner, during the hearing, had some very direct questions to local leadership. And I appreciate your leadership because that was enlightening. And for you to put this line of succession in the bill, I think, is critical. And I'm glad Chief Kidd is here. Maybe the question should be directed to the chief, or the chairman can answer the question as well. Are these, and you may have covered it in the beginning, but as it relates to training, will these folks who are in the line of succession, are they going to be required to go undergo emergency management training or receive any kind of qualifications because they're in that line of succession? And is it something that can be done maybe through TDEM, that it's through an online course or something like that that is accessible and readily available to this line of succession?
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I'm
Ask
sorry.
the question again.
Yeah, so the line of succession, I'm glad that you've got it established. Are those folks in the line of succession going to be required to have any kind of emergency management training?
So the answer to that is it's not mandated. Here's the deal. Those guys are supposed to pick the coordinator, right? The guy that's going to be the ops leader. If you're small enough community where that is the county judge, then yes, you would have to have the basic at a minimum.
Okay.
If you designate that person, they're going to have the basic as a minimum. So I think you'll find most of your very rural communities that are not disaster prone will be the county judge, and they'll take the basic. Is kind of what I envision.
Right.
And that's why we kind of did differing levels of licensures to kind of accommodate those areas that it's probably not a big issue.
Right. And those folks in that line of succession, maybe get an opinion from the chief. Should those folks in that line of succession, if those folks are, loss of life or some kind of scenario that those folks in line are catapulted to be that lead, should those folks be required to have that?
My professional opinion is yes. And I'm looking at the committee sub here, if I may, Mr. Chairman. Page 7, I believe, section 8, starting at line 5, references chapter 418. The section applies only to, and this is an area where, we should have this conversation, Senator Blanco, about strengthening this. An elected law enforcement officer or county judge or an appointed public officer of the state of a political subdivision must have right now 3 hours of training. That's changed to 16. What I see in practice with the or is it doesn't mean I have to do it. It means you have to do it. Should it be an and, to your point? Should all of these be an and? Should all of these people that are either in the job or responsible for succeeding the job be required to take that minimum now of what's proposed here, 16 hours of training in the emergency management discipline? My professional answer to that is yes.
Okay. Well, Chairman Perry's done a great job in creating this line of succession, and we want to make sure that those folks get that training so that in the scenario that we saw there, we want to make sure those folks.
And I'm not disagreeable to that at all. Obviously, I'm getting pushback from some of the county judges under what we're actually talking about right now, but I'm okay with it. If y'all want to get with me between now and floor weekend, and which floors next week?
Yes, sir.
We got a weekend, so we can have that conversation.
Thank you.
Senator Hinojosa.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Chairman Perry, for your great work on this bill. Very good. I just wanted to follow up with the discussion that my colleagues were having, just regard, not to beat a dead horse, but with regard to the volunteer piece and the background checks. How quickly are those background checks, how quickly can they be administered?
I think we could do it as quick as they can run your driver's license on the side of the road before they issue a warning or citation.
Fabulous.
That's what we're looking for. I just want to know, do they have warrants? Do they have a criminal history? Are there people intermingling with the good volunteers that are there for bad purposes? And frankly, I think if you pass this, I think that thwarts a lot of that. And the people that are not going to want to go and check in and register for all of the right reasons are going to want to be there for bad reasons. And we should be able to ferret those out pretty quickly.
I don't disagree with you on that at all. I guess you will have somebody assigned to that specific duty.
Yes, sir.
And then just for clarity, what are you looking for in the background check? Because, I mean, a lot of people have a little something on their background check. You're looking for felonies. You're looking for, high level.
Do they have active warrants? Are they a registered sex offender? And even felonies, depending on the level of felony and how long ago it was. I mean, that's a decision to be made. A lot of people have done their crime and done their time, and they're productive citizens now. I don't want to stop them from volunteering. I don't want people that are out there digging through my belongings or your belongings, trying to take my stuff instead of return it to me. And I don't want people that are going to work outside of the organizational structure.
I think good-natured people also, to your point, that, knowing that this is a requirement, don't have a problem with that, I wouldn't think. I guess to follow up, what is the cost to the state to conduct a background check?
It depends on the service that we use, and we would want to partner with some to get it down as cheap as possible. But I don't think we're paying every time that they pull you over and run your license on the side of the road either.
So to that end,
I mean, yeah, the goal is not to, maybe I shouldn't say this publicly, but through the FBI, I have top secret clearance, SCI. And that was a very expensive background check to look at all of my financials and everybody that I've lived next to and everything else. This is not what we're talking about.
Sure.
I want to know right now, when you walk up here to help, do you have anything that we should know about that would cause you to cause a problem for us on this scene?
So to that end, on page 16, section 418.485 on item B, it says the division may require the applicant to pay a fee to cover any costs associated with conducting a criminal history check under this section. So, I mean, why would we really need that?
I think that was left over from some other versions and probably should be looked at again.
Okay, good. Yeah, but I mean, I would think that would be nice to just.
Yeah, I'm not interested in making volunteers pay to participate.
So we're really getting a couple of issues confused. First of all, there is no FBI check for the volunteer side. Secondly, the FBI conversation is really tied back to the emergency management coordinator in that position, the licensing, and that fee. So volunteers are not subject to the FBI under this provision.
Okay.
We're mixing FBI in with background check conversation for two separate statutes, two separate rules, two separate things.
Perfect.
I will also say that I don't have the answer. The first X number of hours, depending on the disaster, we've got to have people on hand. I will tell you that we currently can actually wall off any community we want with DPS. So at some point, we do block off neighborhoods so that not everybody and their dogs walking through their houses. So we do have limited control over, and at the appropriate time can restrict people. And so somewhere in here between now and soon, I share the same concerns. I do not want someone that can help being turned away for fear that they may have something in their background 30 years ago that may keep them from, or everybody's got baggage, whatever. I don't know exactly how to land this today, this minute, but we will get together as best as we can and do it. I don't disagree with the need. I think you nailed the scenario, 12 hours, 48 hours, whatever it is, depending on the disaster, you have to have those boots on the ground because it takes us 12 to 36 hours to get coordinated.
Yes, sir.
And a lot of things happen really bad in 1 hour. So I don't know if there's a window at some point in time you then can say, hey, can you go get registered? I don't know if it's a time thing. Think about it.
No,
all right?
We can fix that.
Come up with something that you know based on history. We need the first 24 hours all hands on deck. First 48 hours on all hands on deck. I've heard 12-hour segments to get interoperability. If it's 36 hours, pick it. And then at that point, anybody that's not credentialed walking around, just an inquiry, hey, would you mind going down and checking in, and we can put you to work in the areas that are deficient. I think most people would be agreeable to that. Don't know. All right?
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Senator Menendez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excellent discussion. Chairman Perry, thank you for your hard work on this important bill. And, look, the only thing I'm going to say on this volunteer situation, we have victims of a natural disaster. If something wrong or bad were to happen, and we had the opportunity to draft something that would be just as easy as when any of us on this dais goes into a gun store and passes a background check, which is what we all do when we buy one. And it takes all of 10 minutes. And if we leave that out of the bill, we're going to be questioned about why we didn't do it. So I want to say, I, for one, think it's appropriate to do this.
Yeah, I think nobody's disagreeing with the need to do it. I think where we're trying to thread the needle is there's a part of that where state's not present.
Understood.
And the state's present won't be felt for a significant amount of time. Understood. So it's trying to figure out when that point kicks over to state response, where volunteers should be organized and coordinated, and possibly some day after or whatever time frame that at that point, if you see one that doesn't have the credential, that you could just inquire, could you please go and get credentialed?
Yeah, it makes sense. That's not the part I wanted to talk about, though. Sure. I wanted to talk about page 25, campground safety. And I wanted to thank you for the work you're doing on this because obviously, especially the youth camps, these children, they don't have the capacity to make legal decisions for themselves. And so that's where we really need to come in and get all the things right. I had a question, Mr. Chairman. I had heard, I'll wait till you finish. I had heard that there had been a request for a waiver for one of the bunks at one of the camps, because it was so close to the water. And I'm just curious, should we consider either not allowing for children to sleep that close to the water, or it have to be elevated, the building itself? We saw, as when we toured down there, that there were many homes that were up on stilts like they do on the coast, so that when water surge comes in. So it's just a thought. That we got to think this through, because I've read everything you had here, and I just don't know that we should be allowing for children to sleep in areas where we know that's already prone to be flooded. And so I think you're right on in terms of having roof access, but if they're not in harm's way in the first place, that might be even better. That's all I had to add. Thank you, Mr.
I hope getting them out of there at flood warning will take them away from that.
Yeah.
Because the battle to make them go out of the floodplain has been fought many, many times, and I could use the same argument in Harris County. So, developers are going to build. So
Yeah. Those are adults making those decisions. That's my concern is these are children being put in harm's way. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Kokos.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick follow-up as we work through that volunteer piece, and a very good discussion today, and that should be, this whole bill is important as we move through the process. I also, Chairman Perry and Chief Kidd, we need to think through that private property issue with volunteers. I'm not sure that, if I've got a ranch that was destroyed in Refugio County, that I should have to have my family register to work a skid steer as we're moving brush and debris to be able to pile them up or work cattle or whatever it is. And again, you see one disaster, you've seen one disaster, and Harvey was just a very different hurricane than we'd seen before because of the geographic area and its reaction of a Cat 4 and then a flooding event. This being, if you look at the path, it's a very narrow path that it impacted, but cost us a lot of lives and so much damage. But the body recovery was different than we've seen in other disasters. So, but that private property piece we got to be real careful on that.
And Senator, I completely agree with you. Might show a little bit of my ignorance here in a second, but along the river, almost all of the access to that river was through somebody's private property.
Somebody.
And a whole lot of volunteers were on private property without permission.
Unless it was a county road.
Well, the county road is public,
Right.
but the county road, once you get out of that water, you're on private property.
Mm-hmm.
Senator?
That's correct.
You're on private property. You're on somebody's private property.
Which every disaster is different.
Yes, ma'am.
And that's why, with all that we're working on, hopefully, and we're going to have floods, and we're going to have floods in Flash Flood Alley and other rivers. Just got to think through how to do that. My point of reference, I went down with Senator Menendez and Senator Blanco on last Thursday morning to tour, but and that again is a very different disaster on that river versus a hurricane. But we're doing a one size fits all bill here.
Well, and we are, and let's make it a tornado. The tornado that blows through somebody's community, how much of that is private property? And do we want the people that are out there helping pick up all of your belongings that are scattered all the way down your street on somebody else's private property? I mean, this is really the question.
I don't want anyone's, but I don't want. Do I want a government worker picking up my private?
we're going to have to address this through some conversation going forward. We can sit back and forth about all the what ifs and antidotes, but we need to have an internal conversation to come up with a solution. Maybe, and I have found down here in 15 years, not everything has a solution.
Yes, sir.
Senator Campbell.
Just food for thought. Melanie Strong, who's going to give testimony later, but she's asking, what if when you renew your driver's license, you register as a volunteer? Then that could be happening beforehand, and then you get a specific star on your, not the gold star, not the yellow star, but you get some identification that you're a registered volunteer, background check done. We do it for organ donations, everything else, so.
I think that's a very worthy idea that
Thank you.
discourages a lot of discussion.
Thank you,
Mr.
Mr.
Idea.
Senator Perry.
I like the idea. To be clear, Senator Menendez's point, stopping short of prohibiting building in floodplains, the response under SB 1 is give you adequate time to get to safety. I'm not disagreeing. And I think you'll find going forward, a lot of these places are not going to rebuild in the 100. We'll probably move to higher ground. Maybe not, don't care. Those particular campsites were rock, and those cabins still exist today. They're built for time. But when I asked Kerr County, and even on Mystic specifically, there was higher ground available. So stopping short of prohibiting building, if you give adequate time from warning to emergency time, they should have a place. And they will know where that place is. It will have been, again, identified on the front end. And Kerr County said, we've got plenty of things community-wise. If you've got time, you run the risk of loading up a very small road. But on site, there is higher ground. So that's my answer to no development at all, to there should be a place close. And Mystic was a good example. They had higher ground to get to. Thank you.
Any other questions, members? If not, we will move on to public testimony. Go with me. I'm going to call Bronson, David, Tricia, and Angela. So as I call you to come forward for public testimony, I would state your name, who you represent, your position on the bill, and you have 2 minutes. So the chair calls Bronson Tucker, David Alamia, Tricia Krennick, and Angela Williams. Angela Williams. So we'll begin on my right, and if you state your name, who you represent, your position on the bill, you have 2 minutes.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Judge Tricia Krennick. I am from Fort Bend County, Texas, and I am here on behalf of myself and the Justice of the Peace and Constable Association. I am the legislative chair for the JPs. I do want to thank you for this work on this important bill. There's a couple of things that we want to bring up. JPCA is the organization that created the Texas Justice Court Training Center. The Texas Justice Court Training Center is responsible for training all JPs in the state of Texas. One of the roles of a JP is to perform inquests, which I know that has come before this committee, and you've taken a deep dive into that. We do appreciate the language that is in Senate Bill 1 that gives some guidelines in dealing with how inquests are going to be handled, especially when we have a disaster and how that disaster is classified. We have reached out to Chief Kidd, and we are going to start conversations on that important training. What we'd ask for this committee to do is to incorporate the Texas Justice Court Training Center as the organization that trains all of JPs and include us in developing that curriculum with TDM and dishes. In part of dealing with those training requirements, recently we just found out that the Texas Justice Court Training Center has had a significant 20% budget cut. Because of that 20% budget cut, they are funded through a grant for the Court of Criminal Appeals. They have lost significant funding, which has required them to change up some of or limit what they are going to present. They will still be required to present the 80-hour training for all new JPs who are elected to office and the continuing education of 20 hours. But some of the programs that are at risk being cut are the additional supplements where it relates to inquest. The training center works with TDM, they've worked with dishes, they've worked with TMORT, DMORT, and the Freeman Ranch. But we are very, very concerned that we think that the inquest is a very, very important part of what we do. And I'm here to answer questions.
Thank you. Judge?
Okay, good morning. Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, committee members. My name is Angela Williams. I serve as the Justice of the Peace in Precinct 2 of Williamson County. I do stand as a neutral position. In my opinion, Senate Bill 1 presents several points of confusion and misunderstandings regarding the inquest process as outlined in the Code of Criminal Procedure 49. An inquest per CCP 49 and 49.04 is an investigation into the cause and circumstances of a death for cases meeting that statutory requirement and criteria. However, not all inquests require an autopsy. Part of the inquest process includes the JP completing and signing the death certificate as authorized by CCP 4916. A key concern with Senate Bill 1 is who will be authorized agent to sign the death certificate in the inquest function if it is altered or reassigned. On a Texas death certificate, the certifier must accurately determine the cause, the manner, and the time of death. For example, in a mass casualty incident, such as a flood disaster, time of death might be best documented on the time the decedent was found, not necessarily what the actual time of death is, or in attempting to determine what the actual time of death is, but the found time that that individual was found. Furthermore, CCP 4910 already grants the JP's discretion to order or not to order an autopsy. This includes the ability to certify that no autopsy is necessary in a case of a child younger than 6 years of age whose death appears unexpected. It is important to differentiate between the unexpected nature as a disaster and the expected consequences within that context. For example, if a child perishes in a known flood zone, a JP may determine that the cause and manner are significantly understood without an autopsy and not needing that autopsy. In Williamson County,
Thank you. Please proceed.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Bronson Tucker. I'm the General Counsel for the Texas Justice Court Training Center. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and talk with you all about Senate Bill 1 today. The Texas Justice Court Training Center definitely agrees with this committee as to how critical training in this area is. We have, as Judge Krinick pointed out, partnered with lots of different agencies throughout the state. We're affiliated with Texas State University. We have partnered with their forensic anthropology to put on workshops, for example, at what they colloquially call the body farm, where judges can come out and see actual bodies, evaluate how to understand decomposition when you're trying to determine time of death, things like that. The Center for Human Identification at the University of North Texas, Texas A&M Center for Rural Public Health Preparedness. As part of our offerings right now, we do every new judge who is in a county that performs inquests gets at least 4 hours of training at in the initial training. We also, at many of those trainings, provide an inquest simulation where the judges kind of walk through the process of how that would work. And then after that, we currently on our website have 12 recorded webinars that judges can watch on various topics. We've had ME Week, where we have medical examiners come on and have webinars with the judges. We've had the in-person workshops that Judge Krinick had referred to, both at the body farm and both at various medical examiners' offices, including Travis County. Those supplemental in-person workshops are part of our budgetary concerns for sure. We also have a 57-page inquest desk book manual that's available on our website to all of our judges, more than a dozen inquest forms. And so I am here as a resource for the committee on this bill, happy to do anything that helps get everyone to the place that they want to be to make sure these processes happen as efficiently and legally as possible. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Please proceed.
David Alamia, Emergency Management Coordinator with the City of Baytown, Texas, immediate past President of the International Association of Emergency Managers, and the current Legislative Chair of the Emergency Management Association of Texas. We're neutral on the bill and here to be a resource on it. The first thing I would like to start off with is to recognize the emergency managers across the state of Texas and the hard work that they do every day to prepare our communities, respond, and recover effectively, especially those who have gone above and beyond by being a certified emergency manager. There are over 300 certified emergency managers by the Emergency Management Association of Texas and the International Association of Emergency Managers today. In terms of policy recommendations and some friendly amendments to consider by this committee, in the current form, SB 1 makes an advisory committee optional. Several jurisdictions across the state of Texas, including EMAT members, have called for an independent credentialing agency, and we see that there has been forth a change in SB 1 with TCFP as the credentialing agency. In terms of the future of emergency management, both at the local level and across the state of Texas, we are recommending an independent agency to recognize emergency management as its own profession within the discipline of public safety. All emergencies and disasters begin and end locally across this nation. And one of the core services for every municipality and county government is to provide public safety. We ask that the license and certification, and this was already heard from the committee as well and acted upon, include a mastery proficiency level. We ask that the bill also considers EMAT and IEM certifications for training requirements, as well as reductions in some of the requirements on the proficiency levels. Local jurisdictions will require some financial support or grant or a collection of the fees that are collected under these credentialing agencies to provide assistance to those
Thank you.
jurisdictions.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions, members?
Mr. Chair,
Barry?
I just say it, if you had told me that the lion's share of this bill was going to be related to JPs when I started, I would have said no way. This came up, to be truthful, and it's always the reason we react. One or two people that said we don't have discretion not to do an autopsy, and it's required, period. End of discussion, no judgment, no discretion available. That's the story. I don't believe that to be factually accurate in the existing rules and statute. That said, this is a response to that. So, to your point, I do not want to create confusion. I'm not a JP, and I don't rule on death. But at the end of the day, some of the parents were unnecessarily challenged to bring closure, and that's not acceptable. So I would encourage you to get with TDM as we go through these rules and this education process and figure out and answer the question specifically, whether it's an autopsy or an inquest, what signs off on, and get those granularity issues either issued in rule or by teaching or by format. But we got here because someone said we can't do anything but, and I knew that to not be factually accurate. So that shows a deficient in all of your guys' world that you're not educating your folks right or getting them to a point where they understand what is and isn't available to them. Now, kind of the conversation with the volunteers. There are a lot of bad people out there. And I understand that if someone's hiding a bad thing underneath a disaster death, that we don't want that either. I wish, again, we could just make human nature be compliant and good with the stroke of a pen. We can't. But there's got to be a better way than what we experienced through some of this. So get with TDM. I think that's the group you've been charged to work through, whatever group it is that you need to work through. But make sure your education and your processes work at a time when parents or family members need it the most. Thank you for being here.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, my question comment goes to Chairman Perry. Is there in the bill, I didn't see, is there in the bill anywhere where there's a supervisor over the JP to get a second opinion if the emergency management coordinator disagrees with what the JP says? I mean, is there a remedy there?
The emergency management coordinator is not in this conversation.
No, but I'm talking anybody there to give a second opinion. If there's a disagreement about, instead of the JP saying that's it, there's no other opinion. Is there anybody that can challenge their opinion in here so that we have a...
No, I think what we're looking for, and I'll be truthful just as a layperson, a legislature and a layperson looking through here, if I was sitting in y'all's perspective, I didn't change y'all's world at all other than saying you now can exercise discretion explicitly. Wherever reason, the other conversations that came up through this process is they said we have no discretion. Zero, none at all. We have to do an autopsy this way, and we don't get the option not to. So what I'm reading through here is we did a lot of hoops and some bolts and nuts and bolts and belts and suspenders to effectively say you do have discretion at some level. And that's really all we did. And I think you had it before we did the bill. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, finishing up, then asking you, when you're a JP, and this is just for my own edification, does the JP, prior to running for JP, have to have any scientific knowledge, law knowledge, previous judge before, or is it just...
So that, Senator Campbell, no, they do not have to have any particularized knowledge before running for a JP.
Okay.
Once they are elected to the office, the training center does provide initial training. And to the chairman's point, the JPs across the state, I understand, and I understand what happened here in this particular situation. And JPs do have discretion, and they are taught the law, and they implement the law, but there is discretion. And this, just as the chairman rightly pointed out, just gives the belt and suspenders. It gives us that so that we can efficiently and compassionately respond in tragedy.
Thank you for that answer. But it sounds like there's been education all along. There's been discretion. but there's a failure of the education somewhere along the line because of what we saw demonstrated in this flood, in this disaster. So the same education that you're providing now is not adequate to try to get either common sense or, I mean, it's hard to teach compassion, empathy, and when's a good decision to do an autopsy on a child or not when they were swept out of a cabin in a flood. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any more questions, members? Thank you all very much for your testimony. Chair now calls these three. Sarah. Okay, got it. Tara Das, Dr. Tara Das, Vincent Luciano, Randall Daly, and Wes Birdwell. Are they a resource? So who am I missing? Missing one more. Tara Das, Vincent Luciano, Randall Daly, Wes Birdwell. Sarah Horn. One more time for Sarah Horn. And we go to Bronson Tucker. Okay, Bronson's not here, so Kimberly Moyers. We'll begin on my right. State your name, who you represent, your position on the bill. You have 2 minutes.
My name is Tara Das. I'm the State Registrar and Director of Vital Statistics at the Texas Department of State Health Services. I'm here as a resource witness on the bill.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name's Randall Daly. I'm a park owner. I'm past president of the Texas Association of Campground Owners, and I'm their liaison for the committee. And we are neutral on the bill. We're happy to help in any way. RV parks are typically not built in floodplains because you can't get a loan, but we do believe in evacuation plans. In the last couple sessions, we introduced to adopt NFPA 1194, which Senator Flores carried for us last session that didn't make it quite through. But it calls for each recreational vehicle park and campground shall have a written evacuation plan approved by the local authority having jurisdiction. We feel that's important because floods happen in some campgrounds. My campground is very subject to hurricanes. There's some for fires, and every campground is different, and every campground needs a separate evacuation plan or plans for emergencies because we are independent and we are in just different locations of the state. And I'll answer any questions that you may have.
Senator Perry.
It's relevant to right this point. RVs are going to be handled on the floor with an amendment, and it's going to do exactly what you just described because it's a different animal than camps with kids, or for that matter, camps with adults. That's a little more captive and controlling. But what you just did in his bill basically is going to show up on a floor amendment to kind of revise how RVs are treated.
Okay, thank you. And we can answer any questions.
Sure. We didn't get it in time for the sub. I want to say something real quick. I meant to do it on front. I got to tell you, Ledge Council are a workhorse, and we get frustrated sometimes because they're not working at our speed. But remind people, the Senate gets to create time, right? So we had 6 attorneys on this one bill, and they did nothing but for a week solid after the hearing in Kerrville. So I want to say publicly, we thank you for your energies and efforts, and darned if they didn't almost get it right from the get-go. They really did a yeoman's job. We had very little changes to it, and they usually were ours. So thank you, Sledge Council, today.
Thank you. Please proceed.
My name is Kimberly Taker Moyers again.
Pull that microphone up.
Oh, sorry. Again, I did have some questions about the bill about volunteers paying fees. I did have some suggestions
Volunteers do not pay fees for background check. That second is referencing an FBI background check on the emergency management coordinator licensing.
Okay.
No fees, no fees.
Okay,
That narrative, that
Also, private citizens also reached out to their own charities, and the TDEM, they were actually kind of bullying those charities. And if a private citizen calls that charity out, I believe that they should be allowed to have access to that and not be bullied by the state of Texas. They actually also failed on their warehouse management because they don't have like experts in warehouse and logistics and stuff like that. Mixing chemicals, hazmat, things like that should also be considered for safety problems. Also, system of egress in neighborhoods and communities is something that probably should be addressed. I don't understand why parking lots have better systems of egress than communities. Red tape causes delays. We know that as a veteran at the Department of Veteran Affairs. And I'm really concerned that if we add too much red tape, it's not going to be efficient because it also, they're not very effective either because we had some volunteers with them that were actually coming in and shopping in the private people's warehouses that they set up themselves and then just leaving the disaster areas. If a volunteer does pass away, we did have that out in Sandy Creek. Is there any way that the state of Texas could honor that volunteer? Because we did have a veteran that passed away. And then also, if there's problems in the dry creek beds that we noticed when we went out to SAR, is that people were dumping trash. And there's a lot of trash also along in private properties that caused more harm, more damage, and possible losses of life. If that could be addressed in this as well, so we can clean out these riverbeds so more properties can't be damaged. And I did notice when I was out in Kerrville that some private properties had staircases to get out. If we could probably increase more egress possibilities, I would appreciate that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chairman Perry, for your continued support of Texas flood programs. My name is Wes Birdwell. My almost 45-year career as a flood engineer, I've spent the first half at LCRA, the next 20 years in the private sector helping communities better understand their flood risk, and the last 6 as the executive director of the Texas Floodplain Management Association. Thanks to your leadership, we've made tremendous progress in just a few years. Thank you for Senate Bill 1. TFMA supports it, but I would like to suggest a couple of things. Years ago in the 1980s, we had green slime floating down our rivers and lakes. It wasn't safe to swim or eat the fish, so we changed our culture and began to do better. It was a difficult change to make, but we did it. This past July 4th should help all of us realize that Texas had grown to the point that it's time for another culture change. Most of Texas communities are in the National Flood Insurance Program. It's a good program. The NFIP is based on 3 things: insurance, flood risk maps, and enforcement. Like a 3-legged stool, it only works if all 3 are equally applied. I won't bore you talking about insurance, but I do want to discuss the other 2 legs: flood risk mapping and enforcement. About half of Texas communities don't have any flood risk maps. Most of the remaining communities, such as Kerr County, have maps that resemble cave markings. Only our wealthier cities and counties who have significantly contributed to detailed engineering studies have good current maps with models. We can no longer continue to wait on FEMA for our maps. Back in the 1980s, before GPS, most of us remember how hard it was to find someplace out in the country using paper maps. It was also very difficult. It was also very difficult to accurately identify at a particular location on a river or stream how high or how wide or how fast a river or stream would flood. But flood engineers and technology have taken a giant leap since then. Most of our communities who have maps have these old, outdated pre-GPS data on their maps. Texas needs to step up and work with its communities to remap Texas flood risk.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Members, any questions? Senator Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kimberly, I would just ask, haven't heard anything about bullying with TDEM, and TDEM is an agency that has to be called in by the local government first before they can even put boots on the ground. But today we do, as you heard, we've got our chief here, and I'm sure if you'd like to just outside, he'd meet you out there and to take that complaint because they take everything seriously. So, okay, thank you. Thank you. So they'll meet you out the back. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you all for your testimony.
Mr. Chairman,
Yep.
I think I have a question off of your testimony. Thank you all for being here. Excellent. And I appreciate your measured approach and great advice. Mr. Chairman, I wanted to compliment you on, I really believe one of the most important parts of this bill, if not the most important, is our upgrade in our instrumentation and being able to predict the what we call the rain bombs. And that was really missing in the July 4th floods. The updates, there were kind of warnings, 1 to 2. I think Chief Kidd went through that whole scenario of NOAA and National Weather Service. But in coordination with what we're about to get in better instrumentation, which there's a backlog, it may take us a while. It's not going to be immediate. You can't go down to Walmart and buy this, but we're going to get it. We're going to get it in place. The mapping that we talked about, because things have changed, new developments, things that go on with the Texas Water Development Board. And I think, you're real important to say all of this has got to be connected, because as we make these investments in instrumentation, warning signals, other things, taking that data, which in the first hearing, y'all got fussed at a little bit in the Water Development Board that your models weren't kicking out some data more quickly and moving forward. So I want to thank you for that. I didn't say that in our line of questioning, but to your point, yes, we need to do that. And we're going to get better about that in looking at those maps and where floods are occurring.
Thank you.
Dry creek beds as well.
Thank you. Thank you all for your testimony.
That's 3. That's it.
Chair now calls Tim Stevenson, Cyrus Reed, and Vincent Luciano. And Jeff Guggenheim. Jeff Guggenheim. Thank you all for being here. State your name, who you represent, your position on the bill, and you have 2 minutes. We'll start on my
Thank you, Chairman. Dr. Tim Stevenson, Department of State Health Services, Consumer Protection. Here's a resource witness. Happy to try to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you for being here.
Good morning, Jeff Hoagie. I'm also Department of State Health Services. I'm the director for the Center for Health Emergency Preparedness and Response. Here as a resource witness.
Senator Perry has a question for you.
No, go ahead and get these guys, and I'll come back.
Vincent Luciano, Region Chief, Texas Department of Public Safety. Here's a resource witness.
Good to see you, Chief.
Should I go ahead and testify?
Yeah, go ahead, man. We'll come back.
Okay, thanks. Cyrus Reed.
Aren't you a resource witness, dude?
I really am. Cyrus Reed, Lone Star Chapter of the Sierra Club, here to support SB 1. I've got 2 handouts, which I'm not going to be able to do in 2 minutes. Let me raise 2 concerns that were raised by these 2 fine folks here, Senator Colkhorst. I agree with being somewhat concerned about the volunteer registration, and my suggestion is that we make sure, and I'll give you an example. I personally volunteered first with the ARC of the Highland Lakes and Burnett, so I went through their process and registered with them. And then with Austin Disaster Relief, they're both church-based organizations. They were very organized. The first time I went to Sandy Creek, it was completely disorganized. The second time I went through Austin Disaster Relief, it was very organized. So maybe there is a role for those nonprofits to play where you don't necessarily have to register with the state, you just register with that third party. So that'd be a suggestion. Campgrounds, I'm going to agree with Senator Menendez. I love your section on camps, but I think there are situations where we have to look at, should the cabin have been there in the first place? Was it actually not only in the floodplain, but in the floodway? And so something in there where we're checking that and saying maybe there's a process for not rebuilding cabins when they're in the floodway is important. Which gets to my favorite part of the bill, which is the science upgrade. That is the most important part of the bill going forward. Thank you for giving the extra money for Water Development Board for the Mesonet, whatever it's called, Texas Mesnet. They did actually ask for more money, to be clear. So that's important. The last thing I'll say is this handout is not responsive to the bill, but it is other things in flood prevention that we should be looking at. It's not really on the governor's call, but there were recommendations in the state flood plan.
Thank you for your testimony.
That will be needed to be
Senator
addressed
Perry.
going forward.
Thank you. To dishes, either one. So currently, camps are under y'all's jurisdiction, correct?
Youth camps only, sir, not RV camps at all.
Yeah, not RVs, but I keep hearing youth. I want to make sure if I'm a camp that houses adults sometimes, and I'll give you a good example. Summer Baptist camp over in New Mexico is pretty much youth. And then when school's back in place, they let us old people go to the camp. That would still be under your jurisdiction.
Under youth camp, we regulate when they're in session for minors. So when the adults are there, we don't license that
Well,
part
so that answers a question. We'll have an amendment that'll make sure you cover adults, because old people like me need to know how to get to higher ground too.
Yes, sir.
Maybe even more so than youth. So we'll need to amend that to include that. So I'm going here because what I'm going to ask is, you currently have jurisdiction and you currently have people assigned to camp duties, correct? And we heard 6 out of 19 don't have an evac, or 6 out of 19 have an evac. We're not sure. So it's not going to be an additional cost per se for you to go out and check evac plans and do the things we're asking you to do, correct? Because you're already there. You're in that world. Is that a statement or not?
Devil's in the details, maybe, sir, rather than issue a blank check.
Yeah.
It depends on what we ask them to do. If it's they're already checking the plans. I didn't check every 374 youth camp, both day camp and overnight camps that we have licensed. But we don't have a lot of violations in the sense that they didn't have
one. So there
have a plan.
Yep.
They check that the sanitarians who are there.
Okay.
Their wheelhouse is health and safety, sanitation, all of those aspects.
Makes sense.
Not evacuation plans, not approving evacuation
But
plans.
you can check that fairly easily, correct? As far as muster drills and those kind of things, you can ask and they can lie. At the same time, I would anticipate as a camp community, there will be random survey and spot checks to the actual participants of the counts that we may at some point in time develop that y'all could, I need to talk to a camper. We may send it to parents after the fact and say, tell me if your kid was exposed to a muster drill. Basically, did they actually do the drill? Yes. This is not going to be, trust but verify. We have found that we probably shouldn't trust.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
just
sir.
to be perfectly frank. So we will have independent ways to go at it to make sure that camps are not just filing away evac plans.
Yes, sir. And
So y'all are currently in that world. I'm not expecting a huge fiscal notice where I'm going here. It shouldn't be a whole lot more effort to say, let me see your evacuation plan, and it's produced or not. If it's not, then as of probably Tuesday or Wednesday when this floor goes off the flat, first time offense, you get a warning. Second time, you lose your license. Something pretty strict, and I'm not so sure first offense, but we'll work out the details. I appreciate what you do and you be here and stuff.
Senator Kokors.
Thanks for the follow-up. Good questions, Senator Perry. As I read 141, sobering fact, there's not a lot of words like flood in it. And so in the list under 141.009, it goes through and says proper fire precautions. I had put proper fire and flood precautions. It's just not a lot in 141 about flooding.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Got to be about 141.
We're going to take yours and we're going to meld it.
Yeah. I just, Mr. Chairman, it kind of came up during the hearing in Kerrville. When I was sitting there and I was pulling up 141 and I was like, whoa, we really need to look at that and reconsider and think through that. So look forward to working with y'all.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Any more questions, members? Thank you all for being here.
I do, real quick.
Senator Perry.
DPS, you may not have the expertise. FBI check is 72 hours. Do you know that to be?
On the 10 fingerprints?
Yes. Okay. And that was a different section of the bill, everybody. That's not volunteers. I just want to make sure. It ain't going to be 72 hours to get a check on a volunteer. It's going to be like a background check for a gun. Not FBI, not federal. But I see a face. How long is it going to take for me to get registered as a volunteer for just your standard, no information kept, tracked, it just pops up, guy can buy a gun, guy can't buy a gun. That's pretty quick, but that's federal.
That's a federally mandated check.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to run you and I'm going to run your criminal history as a police officer, I have to have a reason to do it. So
well, they sign a waiver.
And now, okay, the next thing is when we have thousands of people show up, the number of checks that are going to have to be done are going to have to be run through a dispatch center. Dispatch centers were overloaded during all of these events. So you're not going to have the ability to do that. Who runs criminal histories is highly regulated both on the state side and the federal side. And the access to TCIC, NCIC is also restricted heavily by both federal and state law. So there's a bunch of hurdles.
So let me ask it this way, very direct, very succinct, it's the last data set that you referenced that is basically what we would be checking these folks by, that last one, the TC.
Yeah, legally you couldn't do it.
Okay, well, if the statute says this guy can do it, assuming we get that out of the way, from a time per commitment, it's substantial, is what I'm hearing.
It would have to be a law enforcement agency that does it. Like if I'm going to run it on the side of the road, even then they come back late sometimes.
So the comparison that it's when I'm on the side of the road and you're checking me for warrants, it's the same test, but when you do it in mass volume, you create bottlenecks.
You will.
That's what I'm hearing. Same test, you would just create bottlenecks.
And you'd have to have a law enforcement agency.
Correct.
To do.
And I think that's what they envisioned there. Is wouldn't be necessarily Tatum specifically, but we would literally be creating a bottleneck in probably an area that's got broadband suspect reliability anyway. So, all right, I appreciate. Glad I asked. So, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to ask you, DPS, and I'm sorry I forgot your first name.
Vince.
Thank you, Vince. You heard earlier, I'm not sure you were here or not, but one of our volunteers in the Travis County had suggested perhaps having, when you renew your driver's license, at that time signing up to be a volunteer so that hoops are jumped through or things are checked prior to the driver's license. And I recognize that's new, haven't thought about, and there may be some things we have to do, but without anything prolonged and sounding like it's impossible, can you tell us how we could do that? And I realize you don't have all the details, but it is possible, don't you think?
In theory, but again, the people that would be authorized to run those criminal history checks would not be your driver's license clerks that are
DMV.
Right?
Yeah.
Unless you want to put them through
the
same requirements that you would do for a communications operator or a police officer with a background, polygraphs, and what have you.
Well, before we get too deep in it, what we're trying to do is find an alternative way to get volunteers, the 90+% that are true, good, honest volunteers, separating the wheat from the chaff, and finding a way to get them registered early. So thank you. It's going to be a work in progress, but I think it's a good idea. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Kokhorst.
Just to follow up, and I want to ask DPS this, and Chief Kidd, you're in the back of the room, following up on that driver's license conversation. So we do organ donors, and we have that denoted on a driver's license. You don't have to be a background check to be an organ donor, but we do that process. So, Chairman Perry, there might be something, I think this driver's license thing, or potentially, I'm going to throw this out. Chief Kidd, you know this after Harvey. I had a number of people, like the guys with the boats, say, gosh dang, why can't we just have a database so when it happens, they know we're coming with our boats? I mean, these are professional guys that do water maneuvers all the time. So I think that's where we need to think through potentially, and we could do it through rulemaking. But I want us to think about that driver's license thing. If we organ donors have a whole thing on their driver's license, maybe this could too.
Senator Perry.
I just say we're going to pursue looking at VOAD and what organizations are automatically kind of pre-cleared, exempted. See if that can be reviewed. I don't know, and maybe if we can get groups that are organized to do their jobs, can get them through some of that, and then make it kind of a volunteer that I want to be part of your network. But no easy answer.
Senator Betancourt.
Thank you. And Chair Perry, you're on the right track. I think we could take those VOAD groups and then we could maybe batch clear these, okay, in a non-emergency management, pressurization. If you take those lists, they're basically lists of volunteers that you could actually get those lists uploaded and pre-cleared if we could do it in a batch format and not in the middle of a disaster response. Because when we say batch, we're talking, what's your definition of a large group of pre-clearance? 100?
It's individual at the point of entry.
Well, no, I'm just trying to say if we batched it up, because he's got third-party vendors that does this.
But it's so if you batched up 1,000 at the end of the day and sent them in and they processed them, but that person's still standing at the desk.
No. If we do it in advance, the pre-clearance.
Advanced pre-clearance through VOAD.
If I could tell me what's batch. How big is this for you?
That would be more of a how long it takes for each one. If each one took 72 hours through crime records, then however big your batch is, probably times 72 hours per each one, and then realize those personnel during that time period are not doing their job in crime records. So, 1,000 people, 72,000 hours, whatever that math is. I'm a cop, I'm not a mathematician. So however many days that is, weeks, months of people not doing what they're supposed to do with crime records would be the result.
So I want to move on from this because we clearly are going to work on it in some fashion, but it does not require an FBI check, which is the 72 hours. Secondly, the volunteers, specifically more of your individual walk-ups, is what we're really talking about. If VOAD groups are exempted from this already, then it really is honing in on the guy that literally got up and decided to go help. And I think it's critical that we establish a certain time frame where at some point it is okay to ask, why aren't you credentialed? I hope Kid has a good answer as to 36 hours. At 37 hours, you should have a credential if you're hanging around. And then we won't front load with a lot of volume typically, because most of those people will either move on or have done their deal or are part of organized groups that are exempted from MOAD. So I understand the sensitivity, I understand the desire, the goals. I don't think it's going to be as big an issue as we believe it to be, but we will work through it. As far as the actual check go, I get you have to be licensed to have access to that information. You have to have a process, but there's no way to batch an individual verification process because the whole point is getting that individual verified so they can either buy a gun in most cases or actually go to work right then. So holding them up for batches and things like that doesn't fix it. But there is no 72-hour process for the volunteers in this bill. We're not certifying those criminally background checks at the FBI level. That I keep reiterating because what leaves this hearing is headlines, Senator Perry and committee wants a 72-hour background check for FBI purposes criminal to volunteer at the next disaster. That's what would go out of here because I understand the press gets exactly what they want. So to reaffirm, we will have some way of initiating volunteers into a database. Exactly what that looks like today will be determined between now and Tuesday. Thank you.
Any other questions, members? Thank you all for your testimony. The chair now calls Dakota Moyers, Brian McMath, Kelsey Strufert, and Matt Nelson. Matt Nelson.
Mr. Nelson's was actually registered for the wrong bill. I think he was here for 2, not 1, but I can handle any resource questions for the board.
We me slip another one. Adam Hayes. Haynes. It's not in front of me. I had to hear it. Haynes. All right, we're all right. Please begin.
Yes, sir. Brian McMath, Executive Administrator, Texas Water Development Board, here as a resource witness.
Thank you.
Good morning, Kelsey Erickson Stroifert on behalf of the Texas Restaurant Association in support of Senate Bill 1. Really just here to thank Senator Perry and his team for including small businesses in the micro business disaster recovery loan program. All of you have supported that language in the regular session in a bill by Senator Alvarado, but it ran out of time over in the House. And so we're very grateful for this opportunity to fix that. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members, Adam Haynes, Conference of Urban Counties, here to testify on the bill. Senator Chairman Perry, thank you to you and your staff for the great work you've done on this. Thank you to your staff for communicating us and trying to work on a couple of things on the committee sub. I'll break my testimony down real easily and real simply. Flexibility. A lot of what y'all talked about today, Senator Kokorsh, you're spot on. If you've been to one disaster, you've been to one disaster. On some of the main issues you talked about on the volunteerism, allow us locally to put some of that in place, allow the volunteer, but allow TDEM to write the rules. It says if you're there, if you just show up, you hadn't registered, you got to work daylight hours. You got to work with a law enforcement officer, lots of things, put flexibility. And TDEM is our partner in every disaster, regardless of if it's a one-to-one. TDEM is always there for counties, and we appreciate that, and they're a great partner. So give them flexibility. Two, on the funding issue of this, a lot of this is going to be increased funding at the local level. Getting into my chairman's wheelhouse here, it might be time to look at Chapter 26 rather than the incarceration rate, it's a public safety rate.
Question has already been said.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Guessing what you would ask.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In Section 8 of the bill, on the when the county judge is out, there's already a statute, the Local Government Code 81028, that allows a judge in some counties, it's only the largest counties, and we added Galveston County this session, allow the county judge to pre-clear the person who is the emergency response before the judge leaves, so there's not any confusion once the disaster hits. Make that applicable to all counties rather than the top 5 in Galveston. So it's already in statute. Just take that bracket off. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Hello again, Dakota Moyers. I'm a U.S. Navy veteran, and I use my expertise that I gained in the Navy as a logistics specialist to help establish several warehouses across the flood zone from Kenyon Lake all the way up to Leander, even in Lugenbach, Fredericksburg area. I was able to effectively collect, organize, stage, and distribute donated supplies to everyone who had needed that with the help of a very good amount of people in the community. And one thing that I noticed is there's really no known standard of safety. I mean, which I think could be better used in an emergency plan. Almost everywhere I went, I found hazardous materials thrown carelessly, including things like bleach and ammonia, which anyone who took a home economics class can say is very, very dangerous and can create an outbreak of mustard gas. Also, I've found that certain officials were discouraging any more donations after they claimed to have found all deceased people. Even if they had found all deceased people, the donations of supplies of food, water, and other materials, they are not for the dead, they are for the living. And I just want to be on record saying that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Members, any more questions? Thank you all very much. So the chair now calls Kenneth Flippin, Eric Jones, Ashley Harris, and Melanie Strong. Eric Jones, Ashley Harris, and Melanie Strong. Thank you for being here. Your name, who you represent, your position on the bill, and you have 2 minutes. We'll begin on my right, please.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for this bill. Again, Kenneth Flippin, Texas chapter of U.S. Green Building Council. Before I start my testimony, I want to say that I've tried to visit with every one of your offices. I've also delivered to y'all's clerk a lot of resources that a bunch of environmental groups have put together for y'all. Part of it is explaining the difference between the floodway and the flood zone. And also some of it, we've been asked a lot of technical questions that we've given feedback to y'all. I'll try to make sure if I haven't followed up with your offices, I'll follow up soon. Just want to say this about the camp part. Understanding the difference between the flood plain and the flood way is really important. The new river, the flood created the new river, okay? The floodway is where it's going to flood the next time it comes. The flood plain is further beyond that. There's also what's called the BFE, which is the basic flood elevation, and that's going to be all the way across that floodplain. It's that same level. Our recommendation is more than just the campground saying that they need to have the ladder. There's also recommendations in another bill, and somewhat it's been enforced somewhat within the current regulations to put life jackets in those buildings. The other thought, though, is that, again, to Senator Menendez's point, should we be building there anyway? We could put restrictions that focus on the 100-year floodplain, or we could just say the floodways. And the point is this: what should we say about those buildings? Across the country, many counties restrict in those floodplains, in those floodways, that they build 1 foot above, some up to 2 foot above, whatever that floodway is. And that's our recommendation. Obviously, it's important that if you can elevate that building, if the floodwater comes, even if it's just, filling up that building, some of these buildings could be pushed off their base, and then they're adding to the problem down the river, right? And so the point is, if you build it up, it's much less likely to get knocked off.
Thank you for your testimony.
Have some other recommendations as well.
Thank you. If you have them in writing, you can submit them, and we'd love to see them. Please proceed.
Hello, Chair members. My name is Ashley Harris with United Ways of Texas, testifying on Senate Bill 1. Today, I just want to highlight one key area that y'all have talked a lot about where I think potential tweaks, more review should be considered. On volunteer coordination, Senator Colcourse, other members, y'all have talked a lot about this. If the goal of the statewide volunteer management system in the bill as written is to better coordinate spontaneous volunteers during disasters, I think it's really important that we don't unintentionally discourage participation. We've heard directly from many community leaders, Chair Perry, including your local United Way, that many volunteers hesitate to register in formal systems out of privacy or other concerns. Also, undergoing criminal background check, another issue y'all have talked a lot about, can also discourage participation. I think it's really important, we've seen as a best practice, that screening for volunteers should always be proportional to the volunteer role. And we need to avoid unnecessary barriers, particularly for those low-risk assignments. I know, what those assignments look like can vary across, but I think the screening should be based on what those various opportunities are. Furthermore, I want to say that many volunteers come through faith-based organizations and establish COADs and VOADs, and those groups often have strong partnerships, and that's built on trust. And so if these networks cannot integrate into a statewide volunteer management system, critical local capacity and community trust could be lost, which I think really undermines the worthy goal of enhancing volunteer coordination. So in closing, I just want to thank the committee for the conversation today and the thoughtfulness, Chair Perry, that you're putting behind this bill. I also want to thank TDM, especially Courtney Goss at TDM, who has been a great partner with nonprofits and always encourages their voice when it comes to not just moving initiatives forward, but really looking for solutions. And I look forward to reviewing the committee substitute, which my apologies, I have not seen it, and we'll follow up with the offices with more concrete language.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Please proceed.
Good morning. My name is Eric Jones, representing myself. Members of the committee, Senator Campbell, fellow Texans, thank you for your time. I speak for the hardworking families of Windy Valley Road and Leander along Sandy Creek, where the July 5th flood surged 30 feet above normal, shattering homes and lives. Families clung to rooftops, watching their own world and loved ones vanish. Travis County officials claimed hundreds of first responders were deployed, but we saw no on-duty responders on Windy Valley Road. As calls for help went viral, heroes arrived. Off-duty first responders defying orders, former military and other volunteer community members descending with a mission from God, and they deserve some sort of recognition. Their selflessness defines what it means to be a Texan, and in spite of that, the county's silence and lack of empathy scarred us all. Simply showing up could have changed everything, but instead we have seen and felt the wreckage, the loss, the abandonment, and the death. I thank Senator Campbell and her team for championing this community. We're forever grateful to you. But we can never let victims and volunteers be forced to find their own people after being told help is on the way for days on end. We demand accountability for Travis County's failures at what was ground zero on Windy Valley, and we need a true sense of urgency for survivors cleanup and financial support by cutting red tape, by raising penalties for fraud or looting who grift and take advantage of victims of a natural disaster, and ensuring volunteer background checks are streamlined in a way like the suggestion from my new friend for life, Melanie. We need a commitment to prevent this through proper dam permitting of those private earthen dams that exist, proactive creek maintenance, sirens, warning systems, emergency evacuation plans for all areas at the bottom of these hill country canyons.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you again.
Please proceed.
Good afternoon. I'm Melanie Strong. Thank you for having us. We already touched, or Senator Campbell already touched on my idea with, DPS being maybe possibly the entity who performs the background check. If, like Regional Director Luciano said, the DPS people at the DMV office, shouldn't have access to those things, but it would just, in my head, it would just be a check mark box of, yes, I want to register as a volunteer, and then they go to a separate page where they have to, sign and say, yes, I want my background check. And then that just goes into a system where the people who are allowed to see those things or review those things, it just goes to them instead of the DPS people reviewing it themselves. And then further, you had mentioned about cabin rooftop access, retrofitting cabins to allow rooftop access, won't be useful if the cabins get washed away, like many did. Possibly, I feel cabins should be held to a higher standard, especially ones that, have children in them, when it comes to the engineering of how they're made. And some may be able to be retrofitted, with hurricane ties or, other things, but some maybe have to be re-engineered completely and just redone or rebuilt. Well, that's pretty much all I got, I think.
Senator Perry?
Oh, sorry, one more thing.
Please.
One more thing. I think a good balance, in my opinion, would be immediately deploying DPS to areas that, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
Senator Perry?
Yeah.
To control anger.
I'm not qualifying to detract from what you just said, but for those that toured Mystic, those were rock cabins, very much not movable. Now, there was literally foundations moved, on some homes. So, and I'm qualifying what about the ladders. That's last resort. That's not first primary. These camps will be required to move people to higher ground if they do a flood warning, and that should give you time. That is in case maybe we didn't even get that close enough to write and we don't have time. It's a last resort. So under no expectation is that the best alternative, but it may be the only alternative. So to your point, a lot of cabins are not there anymore, but a lot of those cabins that are rock cabins that literally, other than a water line on the wall, you wouldn't know there was an event there. That's what I'm talking about specific to that. So I said it earlier, the ladder is absolutely the last resort. So don't mislead. I don't want cabins to think I retrofit a cabin, put them on the roof, which is not ideal, and I'm check the box. No, it's twofold. First level, at flood warning, you got time to get to higher ground. If for some reason the flood event is unique that it doesn't give you that time, you can hopefully get to a roof access. So that's it.
Sure.
And I also understand that y'all didn't get the initial response at the state level, or for that matter, other organized responders. It was a large area, 170-mile area, and I think there were some areas that were literally isolated to the point nobody even knew there was an event out there. That said, I think the county's response was probably slower than it should have been. I checked on it this week, and we still have TDM representatives and other organizations out there. But, I think that y'all were more burdened with nobody knew it happened. And to your point, social media was your first real sound the alarm. So somewhere in that mix, county's got to be more in tune to that region, and hopefully some gauges and some of the things that we can plug into their management system wouldn't be a lot more immediate. But y'all were literally so isolated from the community that I don't think a large part of the world even knew something that went down. And truly, everybody was focused on Kerr. Not bad, but it's just, I think everybody was looking one way. Y'all were standing over here raising your hands and nobody was seeing it. So we need to help address that going forward, where y'all shouldn't be as isolated just from an awareness factor, because y'all truly were. So,
Senator Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I think we do know, yes, the county could have a quicker response. And actually, Melanie and Eric, these two of the 4 volunteers I named earlier, don't actually live in Sandy Creek, right? But they heard about it because of the chatter on social media. They went there with their resources to help. So that's outside helping in, but yet we were slow on the county, and the county has been more responsive. I hope that, God forbid, this event like this ever happens again, but hopefully, and with training that's going to be required in this bill, that won't happen anymore. And I'd say, Eric and Melanie, if you both will just pool your recommendations, give us a copy of that. We'll make sure we can get a copy distributed to all the members of the committee. And thank you very much for your work and your continued work. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any questions, members? Thank you all very much for your testimony. Thank you for being here. Chair now calls Ashley Willis, Auburn Gallagher, and Mike Wisco. Ashley Willis, Auburn Gallagher, and Mike Wisco.
I think you have. Sure. Why? Would you like me to pull that some more? Okay.
We'll begin on my right. It's your name, who you represent, your position on the bill, and you have 2 minutes.
Howdy, my name is Ashley Willis. I am representing myself as a resident of Sandy Creek. I am for SB1. My one concern, though, is with the volunteer effort, mainly because of the slow response. That's all we had. We're just people, normal people. And then when things did get involved with the county and the state, the appearance was a lot of the volunteers were kind of ushered out and a lot of the progress kind of halted. So I understand protecting people from criminals, but criminals are gonna criminal. They're not gonna sign up for your list. They're just gonna show up. So track whomever you want, I suppose, but I think a better solution would be to have DPS out there immediately, like they were out in Kerrville with the checkpoints, monitoring who's coming in and out. I think that would be a brilliant deterrent. I'm not a criminal, but if I was, I'd be like, I'm not going there. So that would be my suggestion. Furthermore, I know Travis County is working with TDM and local residents and like 15, 20 NGOs to form a long-term recovery group. I know Burnett County has one. Williamson County is starting one as well. Maybe we can look at working within those areas to find volunteers, since they're already doing it and they're already vetted. Maybe just look into a community effort with the state and those individual things. Lastly, I just want to say thank you, especially Senator Campbell. Mama B says hi back. But I really appreciate you guys listening to the suggestions. And while I know no bill is perfect and no one's going to agree on everything, this comes pretty close. So thank you.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Hi, my name is Auburn Gallagher. I'm a resident of Sandy Creek. I did the first call out. That was me. That was my TikTok video, sir. There's a couple things I want to address with this. First and foremost, the things that have come out, that have recently come out to see with this situation, is I have to piggyback on the volunteer. If it had not been for the volunteer cry out I did and not for the residents that came out, we had nothing for 6 days, sir. And when we asked for DPS to come out, Travis County said no. So we still didn't have that. We didn't have criminals out there. We did have looters, but Travis County was nice enough to let them go, even though we proved they were looters. So that's a problem. Okay. Second of all, there is a video that just came out I received late last night at 12:35 of a gentleman driving around the area at 2:36 a.m. to show the ESD1 shut the road at on Nameless Road at the low water crossing, but never went to Windy Valley or any of the other areas to check on the residents. So there's a lot of failures here. I don't understand the purpose of registering volunteers, because if we'd had to register volunteers, we were in trouble. And when Travis County came in and decided they had to go to the school to register and get a little armband, then they came out and said, we don't know what to do. Nobody told us where to go. And we lost our volunteers. Our trash also has not been picked up. Travis County only is allowing that one time every 2 weeks. And all the debris is now halted as a pickup. And we're still sitting with debris on the side of the road for over 2 weeks now, sir. So this is my concern. We have been failed at every level, state, county level. We are an unincorporated small community of 3,000 plus people. And without my residents and without the volunteers I got, I don't know where we'd be today, because the state and the county failed us.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Mike Wisco, Agency Chief, Texas Commission on Fire Protection. I'm here strictly as a resource witness.
Senator Perry.
Thank you. Mike, real quick, you're incorporated into the bill to provide the licensing, if you will, subject to TDM's curriculum. And that's kind of an efficiency, but that fits in y'all's wheelhouse very well. Is that a correct statement?
Yes, sir.
And you can manage that.
Yes, sir.
That's what we're told. So these EMCs are going to be licensed through you with TDM's input on curriculum.
Yes, sir.
All right, I appreciate that. To the Sandy Creek folks, it has been extremely frustrating because contradictions of facts and things have made it almost impossible to figure out who's going on. I would say it this way: county could have done a better job for sure. When I hear state didn't respond, my understanding is when state was asked to respond, that they responded.
When they were asked.
When they were asked. And so to be
But
clear.
not on all levels. Mr. Perry, let me explain,
Yes.
because when DPS was asked to come out, specifically by Ms. Strong, TCSO said no. So we had people coming in and out that we don't know who they were. That's how we got the looters. Sir.
So I'm assuming you're talking about the sheriff's office.
Yes, sir.
If you talk to the sheriff's office, that is an extension of the county. So I will point back to when the state was asked to respond, it had to come from the county. And if the county didn't ask, the state doesn't typically, although I would argue we could probably overstep jurisdiction and have that conversation later. But as the way it's set up, those are extensions of the county. The county, from what I can gather, thinks they did their job, but truthfully, they were out there and didn't ask state engagement. They formally requested TDM on the Monday after the event. And that's the first time the state was invited. To your point, and you're the prime example of why there has to be a certain window of time where volunteers can do what volunteers do. But there also has to be a time at some point when you have time to get a system in place to check and see. if there are bad actors. And we'll try to thread that needle, and it will not be perfect. And we will try to minimize discouragement and disengagement from a volunteer network that absolutely is critical. Absolutely. But with co-eds and voy-eds already being exempted, we'll try to encourage people to be a part of that. So, for instance, my church, if they want to be considered a legitimate responder, we will have our church listed in that. San Angelo is a prime example. They have an extensive co-ed group, and guess what? They were on the road recovery the same day, and largely in part because of that extended network that already knew what to do, when to do it, and how to do it, was already in the process.
Is there training for my community that I can bring my community members together and have them trained? Should this be a situation again and it's not a problem for my community to be trained and prepared?
I think you'll find there is training available, and the state would be more than willing to come out and do community trainings for some of these events.
Can I get that information from you so that I can make that happen?
Yes, we will do. TDM is standing in the back with their hands up, and they can get you whatever you need, subject to their scheduling. And I'm not going to say if you want it Saturday. I'm not going to put.
Not going to happen this
but I
Saturday.
think with proper coordination, and he said Saturday's okay, but that's the kind of agent. But we are here as a resource, and there typically is resources available. We don't do as good a job of getting it out to everybody that needs it sometimes, just because there's 33 million of us. But we will accommodate training.
Thank you, sir.
Senator Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, a lot's been said. Hopefully a lot has been learned from this. The one thing that we do know is that friends have been made, allegiances, relationships that will go on forever. That is a silver lining, maybe the only one. But you worked together, and then you worked with folks like Melanie and Eric who came in that were not part of the daily community. But y'all did yeoman's job, a great job. Thank you. Give us a list of those recommendations, possible, not possible. The chairman's bill is an omnibus, trying to make it as complete as possible to help. Should, as I said a while ago, God forbid, please, Lord, from this ever happening again, we'll be more prepared. But walk away with the relationships you have and know that the state, we in the Senate, will do everything we can. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Bedcourt.
Mr. Chairman, we've heard so much disparity between what the county said happened and what these volunteers and residents have said, that I think when we get past the purpose of the special session, especially with getting these bills passed over to the House, I would recommend that we have a letter to Judge Brown and just state these differences. And I think that this would be a really important thing to clear up this situation once and for all. Because we now have new testimony. Every time we have a hearing, we get new testimony on Sandy Creek. And I think it's time that we ask the county for specific answers. Like, I'd love to know why the sheriff's office refused that request. But it's just something I would like to suggest to the chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Campbell.
And Mr. Chairman, I have been in contact with him and gave him some verbally seen him there, and so we have been in contact, and we will make a summary when all this is done, and just got to do some comparison. But we do know, and I believe he understands too the gravity of the problem and the timeliness that could have happened. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions, members? Thank you all very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else present that wishes to testify on, for, or against committee substitute for Senate Bill 1? Hearing none, public testimony is closed. Members, the chair lays out as a matter of pending business, committee substitute for Senate Bill 1 by Senator Perry. Member, Senator Perry moves adoption of committee substitute Senate Bill 1. Is there objection? Hearing none, the committee substitute is adopted. Senator Perry moves that committee substitute for Senate Bill 1 do not pass, but that the committee substitute adopted in lieu thereof do pass and be printed. The clerk will call the roll.
Perry. Aye. Flores.
Aye.
Betancourt.
Aye.
Blanco. Campbell.
Aye.
Hinojosa. Colkhorst. Menendez. Schwartner.
8 ayes.
8 ayes, 0 nays. The bill will be reported favorably to the full Senate. Members, the chair lays out a matter of pending business, Senate Bill 13 by Senator Perry. Members, Senator Perry moves adoption of the committee substitute to Senate Bill 13. Is there objection? Hearing none, the committee substitute is adopted. Senator Perry moves that committee substitute for Senate Bill 13 do not pass, but that the committee substitute adopted in lieu thereof do pass and be printed. The clerk will call the roll.
Perry. Flores.
Aye.
Betancourt.
Yes.
Blanco. Campbell.
Aye.
Hinojosa. Colkhorst. Menendez. Schwartner.
8 ayes.
There be 8 ayes and 0 nays. Senate Bill committee substitute for Senate Bill 13 will be reported favorably to the full Senate. At this time, I'll pass to Chairman Perry.
Sorry, members, I'm going to interject real quick. So Sandy Creek in that area also presented some issues with debris removal still ongoing. A lot of that is gated and private community property. So as we think about going forward, how to address debris removal when it's private property ownership, gated communities that present challenges, I'm told volunteers are going door by door by door to look at debris piles and ask if they can help in removal. So there's always nuances and other sides of the story that change. So as we have these conversations, the full picture was a lot of the debris piles that people see and potentially had cadavers in them are on private property, and you've got to ask to go on and move. So that's kind of side lot. All right. Senate Bill 2 by Senator Betancourt relating to outdoor warning sirens in flood-prone areas. Members, Chair lays out as a matter of pending business SB 2 by Senator Betancourt. Members, Senator Betancourt moves the adoption of the committee substitute Senate Bill 2. Is there objection? Hearing none, the committee substitute is adopted. Senator Betancourt moves that Senate Bill 2 do not pass, but that the committee substitute adopted in lieu thereof do pass. Be printed. Clerk will call the roll.
Perry.
Aye.
Flores.
Aye.
Betancourt.
Yes.
Blanco. Campbell.
Aye.
Hinojosa. Colkhorst. Menendez.
8 ayes.
Being 8 ayes and no nays, Senate committee substitute Senate Bill 2 will be forwarded favorably to full Senate. Senate Bill 43 by Senator Zaffirini relating to an exemption from the requirement to obtain a permit from TCEQ for certain dams and reservoirs operated and maintained for purposes of erosion, floodwater, and sediment control. Members, Chair lays out as a matter of pending business Senate Bill 43 by Senator Zaffirini. Senator Flores moves that Senate Bill 43 do pass and be printed. Clerk will call the roll.
Perry.
Aye.
Flores.
Aye.
Betancourt.
Yes.
Blanco. Campbell.
Aye.
Hinojosa. Colkhorst. Menendez. Schwartner.
Being 8 ayes and no nays, Senate Bill 43 be reported favorably to the full Senate. Members, obviously there's a few amendments due by Tuesday or Wednesday. We will work on those, get in touch with Andrew Parks. We know there was going to be some changes to it. Again, thank you, Ledge Council, for getting it this close, considering the many codes that it touched. You did a yeoman's job, and we don't say thank you enough. We will have a good bill when it leaves and accommodate the best we can. Expectations are we can do some things today that will save lives. I expect everybody to take it serious and implement it, specifically flood warning and action plans of removing people to higher ground. And then the other things that we can do will be spread out over time as soon as possible. So with that, members, we stand adjourned subject to the call of the chair. Thank you for participating.